7 o'clock on the nose.
And hello, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Turner, aka Mega Jetty 1, and you can bet on that. And here is Tom from Midnight's Edge. Say hello to everyone, Tom.
Good evening. How is everybody doing out there? Or afternoon, morning, whatever it is where you're at.
Alrighty then. So, yeah, this is a debate on Die Hard. And Tom and I, we've been kind of exchanging, comments and chats over time about the whole matter. So, where do you want to start? Since I'm the host, I'm giving you the floor.
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, are we debating on whether or not it's a Christmas movie, or what are we debating on necessarily?
Well, we can debate on several things, but for right now, yeah, let's start with is it a Christmas movie or not?
I stand by that it's a Christmas movie, even though it's a movie you can enjoy any time of the year. Mm-hmm. Much like other films that are kind of in that same debate, like Gremlins and so on. Because once you take Christmas out of the equation, a lot of the story falls apart. So I feel like it's a big part of the story, and yeah, there you go. I mean, I'm not sure where you want me to begin with it, but clearly it's one of those endlessly debated things, and I don't know if we'll be able to put a sock in it today at all. I don't think that's going to happen, obviously, but no, I mean, I get it's just no matter what side of the aisle you stand on, it's just one of those movies I think they'll always be debated in such a way. Jesse says it is, so there you go.
Yeah. I personally do think it is a Christmas movie because, first off, let's take a look at what Die Hard is based on. It was based on the novel called Nothing to Lose. And basically that was set during a, I don't know, I think it was, Christmas party. So yeah, basically, right. So basically the Christmas party was still a thing even in the novel that the movie was based on. So yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, and I've seen some people try to debate the party, like, oh, it could be this party, that party. I'm like, yeah, but generally, and this is, even if you want to debate it, like, you don't often have a party at your work for anything other than Christmas. It's just very rarely do you have something. So, and the whole point of it is the reason that the terrorists, in quotations, decided to do it on Christmas was because they knew the building would be empty. They knew everybody would be in one area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like there was many reasons why it revolves around the whole idea of Christmas. Plus John McClane is coming to visit his family because it's Christmas, like he hadn't been there for months. They've been estranged, for however many months. I don't know if they really say in the movie. I'm trying to think. I know it's alluded to at least for a while that they've been apart. So like Christmas is bringing them together. Christmas is the reason that there's the party, the reason the building is empty, the reason that the terrorists decided to do their thing on that night. So there's so many things around it that it's tough that once you take Christmas out of the equation, the movie really does fall apart. I mean, less so with the sequel, I suppose, but I have a hard time seeing this one work without it being Christmas.
And funny thing about the sequel is that also too was based on a book, just not the same series of books that the first Die Hard was based on.
Right. This is actually technically a sequel book to a movie they did the first book of with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. The Detective.
And Frank Sinatra, I believe, actually had first refusal on this script when they decided to do this because of that.
Well, to be fair, they did at least try to get Sinatra to reprise his role as Joe Leland, the main character of the detective. Because according to the wiki page here, Joseph Leland was the main character of Nothing Lasts Forever, just like he was in The Detective. The only difference here is that the plot, according to the plot of the book, it wasn't him going to the Christmas party in Nakatomi Plaza to visit his wife.
Yeah, it was his daughter.
And it was in a building called the Claxon Oil building.
Yeah, and the changes. This is one of those few. I've read the book a long time ago, and from my recollection, this is one is a lot like Jaws, Rambo, what have you, where the movie got something right that the book didn't. And that was because the daughter in the story is kind of one of the, she's not the bad guy, but she's not a good person.
Yeah, she like made bad choices, and that's what resulted in the terrorists coming to the building.
And she actually is one of the people that gets killed at the end too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tragedy. I mean, that's another difference between the movie and the book. Is the book had a dark, sad, depressing ending.
Yeah, but I mean, otherwise the character's fairly the same, other than age wise. Because in the book, I believe he's, if I remember right, he's an older, gruffer cop in the
Mm-hmm.
book too than he is compared to here, to where he's more of the young family man kind of thing. But again, that's an adjustment that makes sense, and it helps the story, and it builds it gives the story a better foundation. Because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, you keep getting to the point where why would John even do this? Well, it's exactly why because this is the only way he knows how to save his marriage. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And even though I really kind of stand against the second film and feel like that, and I've gotten into a few arguments with people about how I feel like the second film just doesn't do this film justice, and I feel like the third film got it right. I don't think they should have wound up together. I don't think they were meant to be together.
And there is where we come to the core of this debate. This is where you and I are debating on the whole John McClane and Holly, and whether or not they were meant to stay married.
Because I think the reason solely lies in this film. Because if you see in this film, the problem that is in their marriage is that they both are very selfish, and they're not going to change. And I feel like that's the one thing that, I mean, yes, like as far as part 2 goes, I can accept it. Like, yeah, he could probably give it another shot, but it didn't work. And that's clearly what we see in the third film, because they're just too volatile of a, you have to be in enough relationships to kind of understand the dynamic. When you get in a relationship where you have two people who are kind of the shining star, then generally those relationships don't work out. That's why movie stars generally don't stay together. That's a perfect example of what I'm getting at here. Because generally, one person, I wouldn't say it has to be in more of a supportive role, I guess is how I put it, in a relationship sometimes when it comes to like, you know, certain things like that.
What can I do for you?
Oh, sorry, that's just my dumb stepdad in the background talking when he should be keeping quiet.
Oh, I was like, what is that? Is it a movie or is it a show or what's going on?
Nah.
Like, I didn't know if a video was playing in the background or what. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
can't understand him, so I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, sorry about that. I told him to keep it down by 7, but of course he forgets that.
But at the same time, like I said, I mean, the second movie is it's a debatable film because it's one of those.
This is a Danny Snyder.
I think you're cutting out there.
Could it be the last problem he causes?
Tom?
Yeah, I just heard him talking, so I wasn't sure what was going on.
Okay, give me a quick moment. Just give me a quick moment.
All right. So I'll vamp for him while he's doing what he's doing. Yeah, nobody dies harder than John McClane. That's right, Jesse.
All right. I closed the door on him so this way he won't be able to disturb us, hopefully.
Is he trying to get in on the debate or what's
No,
he doing?
no, he's taking a darn phone call.
Oh, okay. I was like,
he can't keep track of his volume.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I just was trying to, like, if he wants to get in the debate, let him in.
Oh, I don't mind him on the debate, but yeah, but if he's taking a darn phone call, take it elsewhere.
Right. So yeah, you and I guess disagree on that part of the second film. My main problem with the second film is that it's just too much like the first one.
That is slightly understandable. That is an understandable criticism for the second film. At least the second film maintains that seriousness where, you know, he will fail every now and then. He's not going to like nail everything right on the first try.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. To me, like the second movie is kind of like Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Not nearly as good as the first two films. It's still a Star Wars movie, but it has its issues. And that's where I like part 3 for me and part 1 are just so even keel. Because part 3 is more of the true sequel. You got the original director back. You have, you know, the dynamic there. You're not in a situation exactly like the first film, but yet it ties to the first film.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I like that aspect of it. And don't get me wrong, like I said, Die Hard 2 is a great movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's still like a 7 or an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
But compared to me personally, like 1 and 3 are 10 out of 10s.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but I'm curious to hear more about your feelings on the whole, like if they should be together or not kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, first off, that's one of the reasons why I like 2 is because they are still together. It's a whole year later. They've worked out their issues. They're practically in love all over again. And it's almost as if their entire debacle in the beginning of the first movie was like history, ancient history. And I like that. But yeah, but then that's where I come to my issues with the third movie onward. I love Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance, but my issue is that was the beginning of the end of the John and Holly relationship, because, you know, they went through all the hell they went through in the very first movie to get back together, and then you just tarnish it? What the hell?
Well, to a point, I get where you're coming from, but like that to me was more like the director of the first film coming back to saying, look, I'm going to fix what we had. Because to me, John McClane is not the same character in the second film. He's Bruce Willis, just doing Bruce Willis.
I still don't get that. I mean, McClane is Bruce Willis.
Yeah, no, there's a character there because we kind of lose who he really is. We lose the edge in the second film. He's too clean, too perfect. I mean, yeah, he does flub and stuff. That's not what I mean necessarily. It's just that it's tough for me to believe that in a year's time he wouldn't have fucked up their relationship again. Because that's the thing, is he's so selfish and she's on this, you know, upward swing. And for him to just kind of take the back seat in their relationship is really tough for me to believe. Especially considering the setup we got from the start. It carries more into the third film where I can see where they would never really be able to reconcile their differences, because he's not going to quit being a New York cop. It's in his blood. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's not, if you've known a real cop and you're like, you know what a cop's like, they just, it's part of their blood. They can't turn away from it. And the same thing with a woman like her, who's, you know, that got that taste of power. Once they generally do, it's really tough to turn away from. And I mean, she doesn't need John in her life. That's kind of the whole thing. And he needs her to a point, but she can't fix him. And that's where I find the second film a little difficult, because he's not playing John McClane like he does in the first and third film. You don't have this, you know, damaged soul in the first and third film like you do in the second film. It just feels like he's kind of cashing in. Like, I'm just doing this. I'm here. I mean, yeah, it has all the spectacle and some of the fun John McClane scenes. Don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't. It feels like Bruce Willis is really, really phoning it in the second film to me.
Well, here's the thing. You're right about him not going to be able, he's not going to stop being a New York cop. It's in his blood. It's in his instincts. But that's one of the reasons why he stated in Die Hard 2 that he moved to LA to be with his family. But obviously he still got the New Yorker attitude, which is understandable. And him and Al sounded like they were doing good as partners for the whole year they spent being partners. So I just don't know why the story of the third one felt like it had to ruin that.
I mean, I guess I don't feel like it ruined it. I mean, they didn't really give me enough of those two being partners for me to really feel it. And then the same thing also with the relationship with him and Holly. They don't really give us anything on screen of those two, because, again, they're separated through the whole movie. And that's the thing, is the dynamic is set up story-wise that, I mean, I guess here's the thing is, there's a lot of things in the third film that, like, McTiernan's like saying, look, I can do this shit without having to resort to what the first movie was. Because like, that's really the only reason Holly's there, is just so you have the same kind of story you did in the first film where she's in jeopardy. You know, like he did the third film, was like, you know, I'll take her out of the equation altogether. You know, like, and it's all about John, and he's the center of the story. You know, it's like, and
I do agree that's good, but you can take her out of the equation and yet not ruin the relationship.
You could, but there's the fundamental problem, and that's where I say that they can't stay together, because she would never sacrifice her career to move back to New York. And that's kind of where John is in the beginning of that film, is he's not going to stay in LA. He's not the type of guy who could put up with that.
But
And
then
he's still reeling from the loss of her. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's why he's an alcoholic. That's why he's still trying to patch that up. And it's one of those things where if you know people in these kind of relationships, they're back and forth their whole lives.
Yeah, but,
you know, like,
but then why move him
are.
back to? But why move him back to New York? He could still keep that New Yorker mentality and still be a cop. He doesn't have to go back to New York
Because he wouldn't.
And plus, they could have done Die Hard 3 in LA again, but this time, though, even though he's been in the city for like maybe 2 years, he still doesn't know the whole city like the back of his hand. Because that, to me, is one of the issues with Die Hard with a Vengeance, is that the first 2 movies were basically like fish out of water stories for John McClane. He was out of his element. But then Die Hard 3 comes along and says, we're going to put John McClane in his element.
And that's what I like about it, because it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I get where you're coming from. And that's a fair argument. Like, you know, why would you change the formula? But I feel like in this instance, in my personal feelings, like that this was where it works. Like it's that one time where you kind of turned it on its head a little bit. And it feels almost like, I love how the first, because the way the movie starts out, we feel like we pick up, like I wanted a TV series of all the cops, like all of his friends, like the chief, you know, all the, like in the, it didn't even have to have Bruce Willis in it.
Yeah, because those characters were good. I mean, my stepdad and I, we both love Inspector Cobb and Connie and all those guys.
Like I would have loved just a series of just those guys, you know what I mean? Like it would have been, because that's what you see is like, okay, like we've missed all these like just little like vignettes of him dealing with it, them dealing with him, you know, throughout the years, and you could just the camaraderie they have. It feels like we're just dropped in the middle of this, you know, like TV series almost, but it's a movie. But at the same time, just the way the characters pick up, and that's the way John is. He feels at home, and what I'm getting at, and I know it's tough for me to. It sounds like just such an out to say, well, just because he wouldn't. But if you understand somebody who's from New York, who's from that area, especially if they're a cop, no matter how much you try, no matter you're never going to be able to just. John is not the kind of guy who could adapt to that. He's too set in his ways. You know what I mean? And New York is his home.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things. It's hard to really kind of.
Well, here's how I think they could have handled it better without having to ruin the relationship and whatnot. You could have had Die Hard with a Vengeance be he got his latest crook from that he busted in LA, but this crook has to be taken back to New York, so he has to leave Holly and the kids behind just to make sure this crook gets put away behind bars where he belongs in New York. But when he comes back to New York, he finds that while a lot is still the same, there are some changes that have been made in the few years he's been gone, like maybe developmental changes and such. You know, like a building isn't where it once in the place where that was once a blank lot or whatever. And so you still maintain some of that fish out of water element, even though he's in his hometown.
I get that, but I guess I like it in a sense how, like, I see you brought up Lethal Weapon in the chat. You know how in Lethal Weapon, one of my issues with part 2 is they let, you know, Riggs' character go a little bit farther, and then they pulled him back with the whole girlfriend thing. But then by the time you get to 3 and 4, they actually let his character grow. You know, like, and that's kind of where we get here with John, and that's what I love about part 3 is instead of, you know, the part 2 where we get this kind of like, you're pulling my leg, you know, how everything just turned out perfect after that, as opposed to part 3 where you actually kind of see him, he's at the bottom of the barrel, you know, it's that opposite direction, you know, and it's sometimes it is good to see that. It's not always a bad thing to deconstruct your hero a little bit, especially when he's deconstructed to begin with, because it was almost like they built him up too much in part 2. Like he's almost like a superhero in part 2.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. I get where you're coming from, and you could almost do it. You could have them still be together, but then you set yourself up with the problem of Simon would use his wife and kids against him. That's the other reason why I feel like they were kind of left to the sacrificed in the third film as well.
Yeah, and whatchamacallit, because the thing is, I feel like even if darn it, I lost my thought for a moment there. But I mean, still, the fact that they had to go and ruin the marriage, that's my issue, because if they didn't want them to be together, why did they even have Holly survive the first movie at the end?
Well, you have different creative teams. Like, the thing is with the second film, like I said, they kind of set themselves up with an issue, whereas you got to redo a film. You have Holly in jeopardy again, like you did the first film. And that just sets you up with this typical damsel in distress bullshit. And as a director, I'm sure, like I said, like McTiernan, when he came back to do the third one, I'm sure a lot of what he wanted to show was like, I want to do something different. I want to give you, a Die Hard movie, but I don't want to do the same thing, but it's still going to be a true sequel to the first film. Because I mean, that's the thing, is you don't have to see the second film to see the third one.
Yeah. But another thing is, you said about, I just remembered what I was trying to say. You were saying by the second film, they were building him up to be a superhero. I think you can technically make a guy a superhero, yet not have to make him, put him on God mode and make everything perfect. Like, like they did with Die Hard 5.
Oh, yeah, Die Hard 5's horrible.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, there were good scenes. The one good scene I did like was how, John McClane Jr. just threw the bad guy off the building like he did, like what happened to Hans, but instead of falling to his death, he fell right into the propeller blades.
Yes, Die Hard 5 is an example of everything that's wrong times 10 with 2. And yeah, granted, I do like 2 quite a bit, don't get me wrong. It's just
I'm not.
You have this, and he's not perfect. He's not such a Mary Stew, but it's just, there's certain things in there where you get to a point where you're like, come on. You're really pushing me on this. Like, he's too many times he's just pulls it off just perfectly. And again, I hate beating on the film, because it is, as far as sequels go, it is a great movie, don't get me wrong. But
when you say where it went too well, let's look at each segment. First, let's look at the very first action scene of Die Hard 2. He's in a shootout with 2 guys in the luggage transfer place. So
well, the whole thing there starts out conveniently that he happens to recognize the one guy on TV, and he's the only one. That was the other thing, is like... Well,
actually, he didn't recognize, because the one guy, Colonel Stewart, the main baddie, he wasn't in the coat check area. He just somehow recognized him in passing.
No. But I'm saying that made him vigilant to begin with. Like,
True.
At first, he was just like, whatever, and then he noticed those guys, and it's like, that's the other problem, is they paint every other cop as an idiot but him.
Well, even if he wasn't like made alert because of the whole seeing Colonel Stewart, you could still argue that those 2 guys just looked shady, like they were up to no good, and he just his old cop instincts just kicked right in just with seeing them.
That scene's fine. My problem is when you get near, like, I mean, we don't even have to break most of them down. Really, what it boils down to is when you get. The problem with it is some of the better parts of the film, sadly, and that's when you get like the going back and forth up in the tower, and it's because the problem is they let McClane go way too far than they ever would any real cop. Because in actuality, what's his face, Dennis Franz, he's right. Technically, everything he's saying is right. They shouldn't be doing half the shit that John says, and that's part of the movie, though. So like, it's kind of hard to argue that.
Well, to be fair, the reason why they do go along with some of what he says is, if you remember, he became practically a national hero overnight because of what happened in the first film.
And that's where they turn him into a superhero kind of thing. And
but the thing is, he's earned that. He was one guy all alone in a skyscraper, taking down like 10 to 12 terrorists single-handedly with no shoes on and a pistol.
But here's my point. John McClane, the real John McClane, wouldn't even get involved in any of that shit. The moment John McClane would get involved is when he has to. He wouldn't be the kind of cop normally that would
but considering that this was
shit.
but considering this was all happening in an airport where his wife is going to land down, he would first want
I
to make
get
sure the
ya.
place is secure
I get ya,
by the
I
time
get
his
ya.
wife lands.
I get
But then
ya,
when
but-
he learns that his wife is, in danger because the planes have been are now circling blind without any runways, it's going to make him more determined to get involved.
See, and that's where I was trying to say is like that's about the moment John McClane would probably get involved, when he realized, okay, none of these planes are landing, and he would try and talk to the stewardess at the gate or whatever and find out what's going on. Nobody would tell him, and then he'd try to go higher up because he's a cop. Like then I could see it, like just the way he's just too much of a super cop in this movie to where, he's just too conveniently part of the plot the whole time.
True, but you can suspend the disbelief because he's earned that right to be a bit of a super cop.
To a point, yes. But my problem is you have him going from being, like a gruff Clint Eastwood type in the first movie to being more of like like a more proactive super cop in the second film. It just doesn't really the balance isn't there to where they get him back more into the balance in the third film. And again, it's more of a personal opinion. It just, to me, that second film, it feels very generic, and it feels a lot like the second Lethal Weapon film too, where there's just a lot of stuff in there just because you got to have it because it has to be a sequel to the first film.
But again, as we get back to the first action scene, you say that John just gets about almost everything right. He killed one guy, one of the two guys that were in that the luggage area. The other got away, and he didn't get much information from the dead guy other than his fingerprints and his background. Other than that, he didn't get squat from the guy. And that, not to mention, the one bad guy dropped his radio, but John didn't find it right away. He found it later in the hands of his new friend, the janitor guy. So yeah,
no, I get that.
The first action we see isn't really perfect for John.
No, but he's just always there, right place, right time.
But they say he's in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's the problem. And again, it's a really fucking convoluted thing to where Rennie Harlan is not a capable director when it comes. This was a gift. I mean, if you've seen any of his other movies, the guy's not that great of a director.
Well, I'm not too familiar with directors unless they're big names like, Spielberg.
Well, he technically was for a while. Like he was like this big thing. He was going to be, he started with Nightmare on Elm Street 4, then he did like Die Hard, and he did a bunch of other shit. And then he's most famously known now for one of the biggest flops in history with Cutthroat Island. And that's kind of where his career took a nosedive.
Ouch.
But yeah, so like, it's just the genericness of the movie. And again, like I said, with Holly, it almost feels like they didn't know what to do with her, or they had to put her in some kind of jeopardy to make the story. And I know he would be a little bit more proactive because his wife is on one of the planes, but it's just, there's just so many things that, for me to buy that this is the same person in the first movie, I don't.
Well, I did just pull up the novel that Die Hard 2 was based on, not the same as the Roderick Thorpe detective novels. This is 58 Minutes, a thriller novel by Walter Wagner or Wager.
Yeah, and I've never read that, so maybe that's part of the reason why, because they may base the character a bit more on that. I don't know.
According to the plot, Frank Malone is a divorced NYPD captain who is waiting at JFK International in New York City for his young daughter to arrive from California as he is going to spend Christmas with her. Unfortunately, a mysterious man known as Number One calls the control tower and tells the crew at the airport that he has cut power to the runway lights of JFK, and every airport in the vicinity has hijacked and has their equipment hijacked. Darn it, I can't read right now. Leaving them with only 58 minutes to meet their demands until the first plane, which carries Frank's daughter, runs out of fuel and crashes. With a blizzard coming in, the planes have nowhere else to go. Frank must jump into action and save his daughter and the passengers of the other planes, which are all circling overhead, in 58 minutes, hence the title. So yeah, it seems like they did definitely get the NYPD cop thing right with McClane and Frank Malone and Joe Leland. Was Joe Leland from New York?
That I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
Okay. Let me see if I can. Pull
And
that
you
up.
also got to remember, I've only seen Die Hard 2 maybe
yep.
3 or 4 times in my whole life.
Yep, retired New York police detective. But yeah, see, here's the thing. My issue is the whole argument that John and Holly are just doomed to, they were too selfish to stay together. Let me make this argument. Let us pretend there is no Die Hard franchise. There's just one film, Die Hard. Just the one film. It ends with John and Holly together happily ever after. The end. Finito. No Die Hard 2, 3, Live Free or Die Hard, or A Good Day to Die Hard.
Yeah, it is what it is, and you can just let it go there.
Yeah. See,
but I mean, a prime example of this, though, is, when you ever seen the movie Speed?
Yeah, I love Speed. To me,
Okay.
that's the best. To me, Speed is the best Die Hard film.
Well, now when what's-her-face says to him, relationships based on
intense situations.
Yeah,
never
that's
work.
kind of true. Like in a psychological form, like the thing is this is not something that's going to bring a pair together that's going to solidify a relationship that was already that damaged.
Yeah.
It'll last for about a few months, maybe a year. But yeah, like just the odds, like in the second film, the odds are so minimal that something like this would happen to him again is just so slim. Like that's the problem you have there. At least in the third film, there's an explanation for it. He's picked out on purpose because, he's the brother of Hans Gruber. I mean, it makes sense. So, I mean, like it's just convenient that John McClane happens to be at the airport, and again, then you take Christmas out of the second film and it ruins it too. So like,
yeah,
there's a lot of kind of like, and again, I hate when people think I hate the second film. I don't hate it. I do like it. It's just, it's not my favorite of the Die Hard films. That's all. It's like, I put it way down below for the first and third is all. It's still better than 4 and 5 by far, but
yeah.
I
mean, 4 ain't as bad as most people say. Again, just my only issue really is the fact that John and Holly are divorced. That's really one of the big issues. And they did tame it down, but then there's the unrated version where they can drop F-bombs and whatnot.
Yeah, even still, like it had some Die Hard feeling to it, but again, you have a lot of part 4 is what I have a problem with part 2 is instead of
and
Bruce
to me,
Willis showing up to be John McClane, he's just being Bruce Willis, yeah.
And to me, the real issue with Die Hard 4 and 5 is the music did not feel Die Hard because Michael Kamen, he passed away. Like one of the last music things he did was X-Men, the very first X-Men live action film. And I love that music. But yeah, it's like Die Hard 4 and 5, they came out well after his passing. They barely tried to recreate Michael Kamen's Die Hard score. I mean, you look at Predators, the one that has the S at the end. That movie, it was composed by John Debney, but he at least did his best trying to recreate Alan Silvestri's score, even though Alan Silvestri is still among us.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess another argument I guess I can make for my whole comparison is like when I look at Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance, to me, those two films go together kind of like how you have Alien and Aliens. Two films in the same franchise, but they have two very different feelings. And the second film is almost better than the first because of it, or Godfather 2, or, some people even would, say the same thing about Gremlins 2 or Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is another one that's come up recently, or X-Men 2 for that matter. Like speaking of X-Men, like it's in the same franchise, but it takes everything to this other level and places that the first film didn't go. And the second film sadly was stunted by. And that's the whole thing is that the second film feels too much. It also suffers from a lot of the same problems that a lot of the horror films did after Halloween. Everything trying to be that. And then Halloween 2 became all those movies copying Halloween. That's what Die Hard 2 did. It became all those movies trying to copy Die Hard. Does that make more sense?
It does make sense to an extent, I think. But see, here's the thing. I feel that what makes Die Hard 2 a good film. Now, I understand your issues with the whole super cop thing. But like I said, my argument is he earned that, especially after, because I mean, we knew going into the first film, he had probably seen and done a lot of things, but he never seen or did anything as intense as what happened at the Nakatomi building. Yet, and that's why it was like really a life and death situation for him. When he was on the radio with Al, he was like, I'm starting to get a real bad feeling up here. You know, he's like telling him to, if he finds his wife, you know, I tell her, I'm sorry. That's the one thing I never said to her. So yeah, it's like he really, it's like that situation made him realize just how selfish he was and how much if he survived, how much he wanted to change. And that's, to me, one of the reasons why I still love Die Hard 2 is that he has grown from that. He has changed. He has become a better man. That's why him and Holly are still together. So when I see Die Hard with a Vengeance, basically put him back to who he was before, right at the beginning of the first film, I feel like it's devolving the character rather than actually growing the character.
Well, here's another thing you got to remember. What happens to somebody when they get to the top?
There's only one place to go, but and that's down. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to ruin everything around them.
I don't think anything was ruined. I mean, there's still that door's open.
Yeah, because I mean, that's one of the reasons why I was about to accept the whole divorcing of John and Holly in Die Hard 4, because I thought they were building up to Die Hard 6 would be where they finally meet and finally reconcile one last time, and this time they stay that way till the day they, pass on.
Yeah, maybe it's just because you're a romantic at heart.
Yeah, that's that. I will not lie. I am a romantic.
I mean, that could be. I mean, I used to. I
grew up on romantic shit.
And, well, no, that's fair. But like after you've been in quite a few relationships, like I have, you get real bitter, and you start to understand.
Well, I guess that's one advantage I have over you, because I still haven't even had a relationship.
Well, that's probably a plus then, because once you get a few under your belt, then you definitely will understand John McClane in Part 3. It's.
Well, I'm hoping for a one and done type deal.
Because women are one of those things that are very tough to understand until you actually have been with them. And even then they get more confusing than you can think they ever could be. So it's very, like, just the thing is the verisimilitude for me went out the door with Part 2. And that's kind of what I was getting to, where, like, Die Hard 2 feels like it's just trying to be all these movies that copy Die Hard. And that's where it just feels kind of like a carbon copy of itself. To where when we get back to Part 3, it feels just like, okay, now we're back on the ground level. Even though there's some, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stunts and shit in Part 3 that obviously would have killed anybody.
Yeah,
I'm not going to deny that, but
yeah, we're taking back, because I mean, when he jumped onto the subway to try and get that bomb, he's like,
the boat, when they jump on the boat,
yeah, he's like, this is a bad idea.
There's no way he would have lived through that, just like a lot of the shit through the second film. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make that excuse at all.
Yeah, it's a movie, so you got to suspend your disbelief,
right?
Just
but
a
at least
bit.
For me, just that third film seems to take it back down to that level that I can believe it again, like it was with the first film, where it was like he's reluctant, he's in this situation that he doesn't want to be in, he's damn near on the verge of losing his job, he's on this downward spiral, he's been, in the spotlight. Even if you add in that he's dealt with the same shit that he's dealt with in the first, in the second film as well, I mean, that's another thing that's just going to send him, in this other direction, spiraling with, all kinds of PTSD and all kinds of, that's the other thing is like that the second film didn't take into consideration is the type of shit that he would have gone through after that film, him and his wife, like the amount of therapy and shit they would have needed, and how he probably would have walked away from a lot of that, because that's what cops generally do. They tend to bottle up and, take all their feelings and turtle them up inside, kind of thing. And that's the other thing is most cops don't end up most cops' marriages end up in divorce. Like, I think their divorce ratio is in the high 80s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look it up for the exact number, but it's not real good. So
Yeah.
like, that's another reason. And I mean, I'm getting a little technical here, but I mean, and again, the big reason for kind of having her out of the picture, to so to say, in third film, I feel like is more of a story choice so that she's not a liability.
Understandable.
Yet they have that door open at the end of the film there to where, you know, he fucks up and leaves her hanging on the phone again and all that kind of shit, you know. And again, it's one of those things where you can kind of just leave it, like, you know, like you said, they keep reconciling, and you know, they just can't keep it together. And, you know, over the years, back and forth. That's more believable than they live happily ever after, to me.
Yeah, I mean, there are some relationships that can end that way. You just don't think John and Holly are that type of relationship.
I do, because from my understanding from the second film, she's the head of the Nakatomi
building
business
now. Yeah, because of Takagi's passing, of course.
So, like, you could stop and think, like, okay, I'm going to give you a scenario, but that could have happened somewhere. Mm-hmm. They got divorced, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they thought about getting remarried, but then she wanted John to sign a prenup. How do you think he would react to something like that? Like, there's a million scenarios.
What the hell? What the fuck?
Because she's a millionaire now.
Exactly.
Like, you got to stop thinking these things. Like, it's, you know, and I get it.
I mean, is she really a millionaire?
Yeah, she would be. She would be, because
being the head of that. I don't know about being the head of the company, but
no, she's the head of the company now, as far as I'm understanding. I mean, I could be wrong, but
I thought she was just in charge of that of running that building, is all, because I know that
she's the head of the American company or whatever. Then,
yeah, the American branch. Yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, I just still feel
that's where I'm saying, like, you can see where she would never leave that. Like, she would never leave that for John's bullshit. But, you know, and she almost says those exact words too.
Yeah, but if you recall, it's like that whole incident in Nakatomi Plaza in the first film was about them realizing, yes, they have their differences, but that doesn't stop them from loving each other and wanting to be together.
But okay, let me put it to you this way, though. The second film proves more than anything, though, John's always going to be a cop first.
Well, of course he's going to be a cop, but that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not, but it's a bad thing for their marriage. Well, especially if she's preoccupied. And that takes me back to the original part of my argument, is that in every relationship, generally one person has to be in a supportive role. And when you have two people that are very engaged in their jobs and the other person can't be in that supportive role, those relationships don't tend to last. It's just and it's like I said, it's the same thing with like Hollywood relationships, you'll notice, or, you know, when you have two big, you know, that's why you'll never rarely see like two people who are really big in a corporation have, you know, jobs together. It just doesn't work out generally. It's just the way it is. And you can make it work. Don't get me wrong. It's just one of those odd statistic things.
Yeah. You know? But I also feel that because this is a story, you know, it's a movie story, but it's a story nonetheless. The story is meant to go for that happy ending.
Well, you can ignore 4 and 5, sir, and you can pretend they got back together after part 3. How's that sound?
That I can definitely do. Because, I mean, like I said, when I went into part 4 and it said they were divorced, I was like, okay, maybe maybe this is just a lead up to them finally getting back together and staying that way. But yeah,
I knew they were never bringing her back at that
part
point.
5 really. Well, even if they don't bring the actress back, I mean, because I already have how I would do a part 6 Die Hard that would truly end the franchise, but also do right by the original films. I would have it be sort of, it'll start off a bit like the first Die Hard. You have John, you have Lucy, and you have Jack, or John Jr., whatever his name is nowadays, because they changed that, I think. You'd have John and his kids go to the Nakatomi building today, or on Christmas today. It's like maybe the kids, while grown up, they want John and their mother to get back together because they reconciled with him, so why can't mom? So they go there, some terrorists show up, kidnap Holly, take her out of Nakatomi building, and get on an airplane. they're heading to Dulles International. So then John has to fly to Dulles, and then he gets there and finds that he's missed them, and then they're heading to New York. And then it's revealed by the time he gets to New York, this person is the long-lost son of Hans Gruber, played by Adam Driver.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's my Die Hard 6. And then it ends where it's going to come down to John and Hans Jr., at gunpoint with Holly in the middle. He's tempted to pull the trigger, but he wants to give Hans Jr. a chance that he did not give Hans Sr., a chance to stand down, do the right thing. And yeah, maybe John does get shot, and it looks like he might die. But John and Holly have essentially realized they still love each other despite all of the problems they have, and they're going to bury the hatchet once and for all.
The only issue I have with that, and again, this is just my own personal thing, is just the wife being in jeopardy thing. Because, like, that's the thing. That's so cliche, and it's been done.
Yeah,
with that. But yeah,
but it's a tradition, and sometimes traditions are not bad.
It's not a horrible idea, especially playing off of, if she's still part of the Nakatomi deal, and like it puts her in a precarious position, and especially if like Hollywood and Disney would never make this movie now, but like especially if
Disney really has a say in the making of Fox films,
they do. But like I was going to say is what you could even to make it, you could have even a Chinese connection too with all that shit. But yeah,
yeah. Well, another thing to make it interesting. Hans Jr. was young, but he hired a bunch of guys to be part of the killing of McClane throughout the entire franchise. You could say that it was Hans Jr. who informed Colonel Stewart about Esperanza's breaking out, and the place to find him would be, well, where John is going to meet up with his wife. And then,
he might have been a little too young, but yeah.
And then you could, but definitely Die Hard with a Vengeance. You could say he went to Uncle Simon and asked him to take out McClane to avenge his father. And that's why Simon did it, because even though he didn't like his brother, he cared about his nephew.
Maybe.
And then you could have it maybe with, whatchamacallit? Who was that bad guy from Die Hard 4? The one that was trying to steal the money through the whole fire sale thing? Thomas Gabriel? But yeah, you have Thomas Gabriel. He did what he did, but it was mostly because it was part of an arrangement he made with Hans Jr., and his death hindered Hans Jr.'s plans. So this way, the sixth movie is him finally taking matters into his own hands.
It could work.
Yeah, that's way you could kind of tie it all together, and that way...
any worse than what we got, that's for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, come on. It ain't that bad. It's gotta be better. No.
Again, like I said, my whole reservation is I'm just, it's just the whole, like, the wife or the kid or whatever being, but again, I get where you're coming from, so.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up on stories where even if the happy ending doesn't happen right away, it's got to at least build up to that final happily ever after. And if it does have to have a sad, tragic ending, make it tasteful. Don't just make it a disrespect like, the Disney Star Wars films. Because, for example, like I was saying about my Die Hard 6, it's not just John and his kids going to the Nakatomi building. Like maybe the party required some extra security. He meets a young Joe Leland, who's there for his own reasons as well. So you can be like, it'll be like John is passing the torch back to the original detective.
Yeah.
So that way Joe Leland and McClane are kind of like partners taking on Hans Jr. And that way, when it looks like John might die, he hands his bloody badge and gun over to Joe Leland.
I don't know how people would react to that, because most people wouldn't know the significance, but yeah.
But it would be a respectful one. He's giving it back to the original owner in a way.
Right.
That's at least how I would do it, at least.
Yeah.
So
still a chance.
Yeah. And but yeah, anything else worth debating on Die Hard?
I mean, unless you feel like I haven't really sufficiently given you a good excuse as to why I feel the way I do.
Well, I mean, I understand your skepticism because, you know, you've been through relationships and you know they tend to fail. There's no real happily ever after, at least from your perspective. Me, I'm still
Well,
young and I haven't had a relationship of
like
my
I said,
own.
it's not like it's impossible, but just the odds are so against Holly and John from the start. Like that's just, and I feel like, and more of my issue with part 2 has very less to do with that than it does for you, I guess.
Mm.
So, yeah.
But I also, like I said, I feel that in 2, he earned the right to be happy, but he occasionally will mess up. That's why he failed to save that one plane.
Oh yeah, and you can also put that though to the same mentality of why he could mess up with Holly again too. So
yeah, but I really believe that. But I believe when his wife and kids are in danger, that just pushes him even more. That pushes him. Period.
Oh,
but when he endured that failure of saving those people, that made him more determined not to fail again.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, I hate people thinking that I don't like Die Hard 2 because I mean, if anything, I dislike Lethal Weapon 2 more than I do Die Hard 2. But again, all the
a lot of people do say Lethal Weapon 2 is their favorite, but to me, Lethal Weapon 3 is my favorite.
I prefer Lethal Weapon 3. Now, don't get me wrong, Lethal Weapon 2 has a lot of great moments in it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I feel like it just does Mel Gibson's character quite dirty in the second film.
Initially, they were going to have Rika's character survive. It was going to be the movie
they were going to kill him. Yeah, they were going to have him die.
Well, no. Initially, they were going to end the movie where Rika and Riggs go to the Murtaughs for Thanksgiving at the end.
Well, there was that ending, but did you know about the other alternate ending? Where
I know how Riggs was going to die. I know that. In fact, I see a few fan edits on YouTube. And that's not bad because I mean, like, those fan edits are interesting because they don't explicitly say Riggs is dead, but they make it look like he could die. They kind of ended on that somber yet curious note. Is he gonna die or can he be saved before it's too late? But I just feel like that.
And again, the argument could be made even that they didn't even have to be back together for him to get involved in part 2 either way. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just could be a simple fact of because they're in New York or whatever, right?
Well, in the third film, yeah.
Second film, I thought they were in New York too, though.
No, they were in Dulles, the International Airport. That's in Washington D.C.
Oh, it's Washington. That's right.
They were gonna take the kids and
for some reason, cops from New York or whatever. That's what I was thinking of that.
Yeah,
beginning.
Yeah. They went to D.C. because they were gonna visit the in-laws for the holidays. They were gonna drop the kids off with Holly's parents while John and Holly went to get a hotel room for the night.
That's right. Yeah. Like I said, it's been a long time since I watched part 2.
Well, then I highly encourage this Christmas, watch Die Hard 1 and 2 back to back. This way you can kind of see where the journey was trying to go before Die Hard 3, decided to change it.
Oh, I've seen it enough times. It's just, I'm trying to remember more of the specifics. So I probably would have had a better argument if I could remember more specifics from the film, but.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, I went into this trying to have as much info as I could.
I wasn't quite prepared for it, but that's all right.
That's okay. Oh, I figured you might have been more prepared than
honestly,
me.
I've seen it. Okay, honestly, I've seen Die Hard 2 more than that. When I was a kid, when I was a kid, I saw it a lot more, but like in recent years, I haven't seen it as much. Like I watched it like quite a bit before part 3 came out because I bought a box set on VHS that had 1, 2, and the making of part 3 in it.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it quite a bit that one summer. But since then, I think I watched it on DVD once, and I watched maybe the Blu-ray twice, maybe once.
I actually had
it was one of my early Blu-rays, but yeah.
I actually had the special edition Die Hard trilogy, the silver cases for VHS, and the one for Die Hard with a Vengeance had that darker alternate ending of how John.
Oh yeah, that would have been the VHS of the DVDs box set. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, how he came into this German shop where Simon was just drinking some alcohol, and then he pulls out a gun at him, and then he tells him to tell everyone in the bar to leave, and then he pulls out this little mini bazooka. but the firing end has been removed, so they play like a Russian roulette type of Simon Says, but it's called McClane Says. And I
like it. Yeah,
I like that scene. I just don't like that he's, out of his job and he's angry and bitter and he's just deliberately out for petty revenge.
Yeah, if anything, that takes it down to the level that you even dislike more. So I totally get it.
Because it's like you're taking this guy who's been built up to be a great everyman hero, and you're turning him into now the everyman villain.
No, that's one of those alternate endings where the alternate ending is cool, but you can definitely see why they changed it.
Yeah. There was an alternate ending also that wasn't even filmed. It was actually based on, I think, The Last Boy Scout, with how the main villain died in that. It's like right after John and Zeus jump off the ship that blows up, they're like clinging to some debris, kind of like Jack and Rose in Titanic. And then And then on the boat, they're Simon and his gang. They pull up this one briefcase, thinking that there's something important inside of it for them, like a piece of gold. They open it, and it's the bomb from the fountain. And there's like 5 seconds remaining. And just before it hits 0, Simon's like, "Anyone happen to have a 4-gallon jug?" And then boom! And then McClane and Zeus are laughing as they see the explosion. So that was like based on The Last Boy Scout ending.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been too bad, but it would have come off as a bit like a hokey in a way for some people, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
But I will say this. I do feel that the Die Hard 3 really was trying to take away what made John McClane great in the first film, was that he was an everyman trying to do the right thing and save people, and he became a hero out of it. And that was like, it was like even in Die Hard 4, when he's now living in an age of computers and information where everyone knows everything about everyone, yet freaking what's his name? Matthew Farrell and Kevin Smith's character, they don't think to look up John McClane and the 1980s Nakatomi incident that made him famous.
Well,
that's one of the things I like about Die Hard 2 is it's a whole year later, yet everyone knows him from that incident.
Here's the thing, though, is you got to remember that. Do you remember a bunch of heroes from any of the incidents that have happened in the last 10 years? Can you name one?
Not too many, I admit, but that's because I admit I'm drawn more to fiction than reality.
But there's a reason. Like it's just because that kind of thing isn't normally like that broadcast unless you get a movie based on the actual events and you get somebody like that one Tom Hanks one that he played recently or whatever, one of those kind of things. Generally, you don't remember the names, you don't remember the people, so that's understandable. And like I disagree about part 3 because he rebuilds himself. He does a lot to rebuild himself, I feel like, there, and that's kind of what the whole point is you have a guy who's like faced all this, like exactly what you're talking about, facing not only the fame but dealing with the same thing twice. And I feel like they're at least hinting to the fact that this guy's got some PTSD problems.
And he's going to lose everything, and that's why he's got to call Holly and make amends.
Yeah, like I feel like it really is making him face what reality would be like, because that's one thing a lot of these movies don't tend to deal with, I think.
I do understand that the need to involve a little bit of reality in storytelling. I just felt like Die Hard 4 onward really put too much reality in.
I don't know about too much reality, but I mean on the end of like just the whole Holly and him thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Another thing about most relationships, if a couple's not going to reconcile by the time their kids are adults, then they're probably not going to.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the odds are out the window then, and chances are by that point Holly's probably moved on. Chances are, things like that, because she's obviously a woman in a position to where she's meeting people left and right. John, on the other hand, is probably meeting people in dives, but not the type of woman you'd probably marry. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like, I can see it from this culture shock of him to where, just the reality of, going from this blue collar cop to what she's going through and dealing with on her end of the spectrum of her career and where she's at in her status in life, and how John just doesn't fit that mold.
What would have been interesting, I think, would have been we take a moment away from John's story and see how Holly's story is. Yeah, she's doing successful, but it's like everywhere she turns, people are reminded of what happened in Nakatomi in 1980 something, and they're like, "How are things with your husband? How's your husband doing? Is your husband doing okay? Still kicking butt, taking names?" It's like everywhere she turns, even though her career is doing fine, she keeps hearing her husband this, her husband that. It's to the point where maybe it's getting on her nerves.
I don't know if she would, though, because see, like, that's the thing is when we meet her in the first film, she's pretty much hidden the fact that he even exists. So, like, you can clearly see that she has no problems with, giving him the cold shoulder as far as life goes.
Yeah,
and I think KR Companion said it best in the chat right now. He says that's because John is married to his job. That's probably the best answer I can give you.
Okay.
Is John is actually probably more the problem than she is. It's not that she can't commit to him. It's more that he can't commit to her and the family and the life of.
But to me, her issue is she's begrudging his difficulty to commit. That to me is her issue. She's begrudging him of that. And I honestly, there was at least over a dozen hostages with her, and only 2 of them got killed off. 2 of them died. The rest lived. They remember what happened. They saw how John and Holly were. They know John risked his life to save all of them. I would think they would bring John up every now and then, even if it is a touchy subject for Holly, because they're concerned. They want to know if there is a repeat incident, will John be able to save them again?
Honestly, I think you're overthinking it, because most people in a social situation are not going to bring it up. Especially if they know they're not together. And especially if she's never really brought him up much before. Like, that's the thing. Like I said, you got to remember in the beginning of the first movie, she's pretty much erased him from her life, especially her professional life. Like, the only known existence of him is that fucking picture. And that picture ends up becoming a bane for her. So like it's almost kind of like, like if it wasn't for that, she could have got away with what her lie was, and John and her, the connection would have never been made with Hans. But I mean, that was the fun for the story.
You go ahead. You continue.
Well, no, like I just said, like, I think KR really nailed it when it comes down to it. And that's what I was trying to say earlier on is cops, especially New York cops, are very married to their jobs. And no matter what, like, it's like the blue line comes from, I'm sure, from New York. I'd imagine it originates from. Like, it's a very, it's bone deep, man. I mean, if you've ever met a New York cop, they'll tell you.
Well, I never really met one. I know I descend from New Yorkers. My mom and my late mom were New Yorkers. So I have an idea of the toughness that comes with being a New Yorker. But,
so that toughness also makes it tough to love somebody. Because like I said, as you can see, John's not somebody who's going to really go out of his way to show Holly how much he cares.
Yeah. But I do think that she did you said yourself, that photo of her life with him was like a bane to her existence. And yet by the end of that movie, she stopped calling herself Holly Gennaro and acknowledged she is Holly McClane. So I feel like that is where she realizes she had been overreacting and begrudging him too much and forgetting how much she really loves him, why she fell in love with him in the first place.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the movie does a great job of probably painting her as more of the selfish one, even though if you really think about it, she's doing better off for her family than he is. But
yeah,
I mean, it's just one of those things, like I was saying, like in natural reality, they're never going to work.
If anything, Holly comes off as the typical LA successful person.
Right.
It's that she may be living the successful life and maybe providing better for her kids than John was. But the fact that she's practically trying to erase him out of their life makes her look the bad person.
Right, but you also have to take into consideration two other things. John is probably not that responsible of a person outside of this. Like that's kind of the whole surprise of a lot of this. Like she knows like how he'll piss somebody off, her little lines in there. But
Yeah.
like that's kind of the whole point of him being a cop in a situation. Like most of the time, like I was saying, like he's like most of the time when you see cops in these kind of movies, they are the super cop, right? Like
Yeah.
they're, the Rock, kind of person, they're perfect for this position. Like that was the whole point of John McClane is he's not the perfect guy. He's the last guy you want. He's out of shape, old New York cop, out of his element, never dealt with this kind of shit before, has a bad attitude, all the things you don't want, to deal with a hostage crisis, right? Like he's the last of everything you want. And that's kind of the whole point of the whole fish out of water deal that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And like so like that feeds into that side of his character to where he's a reluctant hero. Now her, on the other hand, she basks in the spotlight. So it can almost be understandable that, that moment where she's like, Holly McClane, that's my name. She could just be basking in the spotlight of the moment that she's hot for her man because her man just saved her fucking life. But that's not going to last forever, though. That's the problem. Like that's going to fade away over time,
But how could she not continue to remain hot for him? I mean, she already had 2 kids with him, and he just now went through hell trying to save her life, prove that, he still loves her despite their differences.
I don't want to come off condescending in any way saying this, but once you get into a few relationships, you will understand how 2 people who don't get along can have a very spontaneously extravagantly a romantic attraction to each other, but there's just no way they're ever going to work because there's too many problems. How
do you know right away that the person you're with, you can get along with them and it will work? You
won't, dude. It's just life, man. It's part of life, dude. Like KR's the kids keep them together. That's a lot of people in life, man. I mean, usually opposite. You've heard the term opposites attract, right? Like,
but sometimes similarities can attract as well.
And that's very true. I mean, and a lot of times some people do tend to try and gravitate towards people who have similar interests, and there's nothing wrong with that. And those relationships do tend to have a much stronger base. But now the ones that are more fiery and maybe considered a bit more on toxic, the romanticized side are actually, that was kind of what I was going to get to, tend to generally turn toxic. And that's, you probably even heard the saying, the craziest women are the best in bed, right? Well, that kind of goes along with it, is like those people who you're generally the opposite of, you have the most fiery relationship with. It's like, you may not get along outside of the bed, but in the bed, you guys work like, like gangbusters. It's one of those things. And that's kind of what Holly and John are, is they're this, I can see it, like she's the prom queen, but he was never the quarterback. He was the kid sitting on the corner smoking cigarettes. He was the greaser in high school, even though he turned out to be a cop eventually. I mean, he's still not your typical cop. He's barely a cop. The reason he's so good at what he does is he's just one step above the criminals he's busting. I mean, I'm not saying he's the criminal type, but he's not clean cut. They made him too clean cut in part 2. That was my other issue.
Well, I think that was kind of the point. They were trying to make him go from the reluctant hero to the clean cut hero, because,
and that could be, is that Holly rubbed off on him a little bit, and then he just eventually realized that just wasn't him.
Maybe, but at the same time, isn't it better for him and his family?
It could be, but he might not have been happy.
How could he have not been happy? I mean, he had his wife back, and he was in the kids' lives again.
Have you ever? Well, here's the thing: it's really tough to kind of. If you've ever dealt with an alcoholic, this could be a lot easier to understand.
Well, I've never actually really had to deal with that.
It's one of those things where you wouldn't understand, like, because you could sit there and look at somebody who's like given up alcohol, and on the outside everything looks perfect in their family life, but that person is generally crying on the inside, dealing with shit that you're not even knowing about, and putting them in a situation like we're describing is something that could turn them straight back into drinking even harder. which is why the beginning of part 3 for me is so much easier to believe. Because, I mean, my dad battled with alcoholism for years, and he still does. You know, I mean, he hasn't been an alcoholic as far as like drinking wise in many years, but I mean, it's still something that he deals with. And there's from time to time where he's relapsed and shit. But I mean, when those kind of moments throughout your life, and that's generally when that kind of thing happens, is when you think you're at this peak where everything's at the best, you know, that's when my dad would turn around and relapse.
Well, and that's another thing too. I think I could argue in the whole argument of John and Holly's relationship. Yeah, there will be moments of relapse. I can accept that. But if in the end the story calls for them to get back together by the end, then those moments of relapse are just that, moments. Right.
And like I said, the whole thing with you know, where your problems lie, if you ignore 4 and 5, you're good to go. Because you can still, in your mind, say that eventually they found a way to be happy together. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But just in the way things work, in the way the films are played out, it makes sense to me. And even with the second film, because I could see him going into if he was a quasi-alcoholic and that was one of their problems, which is a typical problem of a cop, if they had that issue in their relationship as a problem, going into the second film, if he was, you know, making all these changes for her, doing all this shit for her, and then goes through what he did in the second film, that would also, I could see where he would relapse big time, especially with some hardcore PTSD. Like, it would really make sense.
But unless he, you know, some of these changes were really good on him, I would think he would genuinely be happy by it.
You would think that, Jeffrey, and you're not wrong for thinking that. But I mean, if you talk to anybody who's been a drug addict, an alcoholic, I mean, they'll tell you it's sometimes when things are at their best is when they get the most scared. It's a number of things happen. It's a part of being an addict. It's part of having issues like that. It's part of seeing the things that you would see on a daily basis as a cop, and more or less, especially a New York cop.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Sarah. That's one of the reasons why Sarah Connor in Terminator 2 was great, is because she was edgy because she was paranoid and afraid, but then by the end of the movie, she became a better person because she couldn't kill Miles Dyson.
Right, and you got John in this place in the third film where, you know, he's joking about being an alcoholic, but I don't think it's a joke.
No,
I mean, he's on the verge of losing his job.
Well, actually, no. Actually, John didn't even. Oh, are you talking about John McClane or John Connor?
John McClane.
Oh, okay.
In part 3, yeah, because, you know, like they say, you know, he was on leave already. You know, he's probably going to lose his job if it wasn't for the situation he got brought back into.
Yeah,
his marriage was on the rocks. Everything else was, you know, going upwards or downwards for him in his life. It makes sense that he was at this place. And it would just make more sense for me to see that sooner than part 2. But after this conversation with you, I can see where things in part 2 would actually send him more down that road.
True. But I also see this where, you know how one of the great stories about a hero is building him up to be a paragon? What do you do with a paragon when he is the paragon? You either drop him down to be the villain or you kill that paragon off.
True.
So I feel like John McClane was being built up, but then they went the route they shouldn't have gone. They started slowly bringing him down again instead of just, you know, keeping him the paragon, but a paragon who will make a mistake or two, like the whole failing to save the plane, the one plane.
Right, but it's also he you know, he finds his redemption in part 3 as well. That's a big part of it, and I feel like that's, you know, just part of his journey. You know, if you look at like the first, if the third film is a third act of a 3-part story, you know, between the second and third film is when he went into what's generally known in mythology as, you know, like when Luke went into the cave and saw it. You know, or like when if you've seen Rambo, the first one, First Blood, where, you know, his whole journey through the cave in that film is supposed to signify the same thing as, you know, the journey that, you know, so you could kind of look at like it that way if you wanted to as well.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, it's always open. The door's open for them to remain together.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But yeah, I mean, I just feel like they had this great character built up to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando, but he didn't need to be like, you know, uber bulky, you know, bulky and muscular. Yet he needed just one film to earn that spotlight as like the hero, the action hero.
Yeah, but the odds of him wanting to do that again are slim. But no, I get you. Like,
Yeah.
You know, part 2 is just, I mean, there was a point I was going to make, and now I don't remember exactly what it was.
That's okay.
But that's all right. I think we've kind of gotten past whatever our main disagreement, if you could call it that, was. I don't even know if it was that so much.
It was more, well, that's why I called it a debate. It wasn't really it was a difference of opinion that we just had to settle, and simply me sending you messages in a chat while you were on stream just wasn't going to cut it.
Right. No, absolutely. So.
Ooh, yes, absolutely. Die Hard and Commando were written by Steven.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because I mean, that's the thing, you know, that's another thing that combines Commando with Die Hard and Predator is the fictional country of Valverde. Because,
right.
Yeah, Commando had it where John Matrix was supposed to be sent to Valverde to kill the president that he put in office there, but he wasn't on the plane. He didn't make it. Instead, he went to this island off the coast of Santa Barbara and dealt with the bad guys.
I love Die Hard 2, KR Companion. The debate was more or less about
whether or not John and Holly were meant to stay together or not.
We're really meant to be together, and that's kind of why we keep diving into that, like the whole psychological and PTSD and how, you know, the whole he's never really been in a relationship, and I've been in too many.
Yeah.
And I know how women can be.
Yeah, I mean but that's what made this a great debate, in my honest opinion, is that we had our differences, we needed to settle them, and we did it peacefully, no yelling, no screaming, unlike most other people in the world. Like,
you want my honest opinion about Holly? I love the character, don't get me wrong, but John deserves better.
You think John deserves better than Holly?
I do. I think she's a very selfish individual in a lot of ways, and like I've said, you know, like look at the whole, like, kind of the way the things play out, and just I mean, it's really all comes down to her. I'm just being an ass, but yeah.
But basically, you think she is the typical Hollywood celebrity type. I
think that the main reason, it's a little bit of both. It's both of them being stubborn. You have, like I said, I think the main reason why I can't see them working, and why it makes sense to me is just like I said, she's so into her career so much that she already has a housekeeper taking care of her kids.
Yeah.
In the first film. And he, you know, you could almost look at it in a way of, I was going to say, he almost may have been self-destructive in their relationship just to try and keep her and the kids safe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, going off of what you were saying earlier is kind of silly. It was sounding at first. It may not, because in his eyes, he may be thinking that kind of a thing, like you're thinking, you know, like, what if this happens again? What if it's my fault that it's near her? You know, so he would want to distance himself from his family for that reason, you know, kind of like how a superhero, you know, having a Lois Lane makes Lois Lane a liability, you know, and that's kind of how it works, you know. But
it would have made more sense in Die Hard with a Vengeance if he just came right out and said that he didn't deliberately, that he wasn't, you know, he and Holly didn't have a fight. It was more so he walked away for their safety.
You could, but that's another part of alcoholism, or, you know, a drug addict or other things. Is some of the core reasons why somebody becomes an alcoholic or a dependent like that is because of things like that. That things pile up inside. They don't know how to express. They don't know how to say, or that they're afraid somebody may think is stupid, but to them it seems very real. And something like PTSD can really bring that out in somebody. And, you know, I think it's just more so because you're getting into a Die Hard movie. You're not getting into a psychological examination of John McClane, you know?
I mean, this was, if they wanted to give us a psychological examination, they would have actually had a psychiatrist involved in all this.
Well, and that's kind of what that one character I think is supposed to. Isn't that one? Or is no wait? I'm mixing up the.
Well, what character? Describe him.
I was gonna say, wasn't there a character in part 3 that was supposed to be like one of the in the cop shop?
Oh yeah. He was supposed to be giving the psychological analysis.
Yeah, because he was talking about
of Simon.
Yeah. But other than that, like you could have had him kind of give you a little like breakdown of Bruce Willis's character a little bit more, but you don't really need it. I think we see enough between his alcoholism, the fact that he's about to lose his job, him and Holly broke up.
Yeah, it's like it's a show that it's a show and tell, but without actually having to say it.
And then that's when it works best. If you don't have to stop a movie and explain something to the audience, that's always
if you see him in smoking a cigarette in one scene, and then a next scene later he's like got another cigarette in his mouth, you know he's like a chain smoker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
sometimes show don't tell works. Sometimes tell don't show works, and sometimes show and tell works. It all depends on how you do it.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's all about how it's executed, definitely. But don't get me wrong. Die Hard 1, 2, and 3 are all great films.
4 had good ideas and potential. It just wasn't.
It had Bruce Willis
right.
working against it.
Why? How did Bruce Willis work against it?
Oh, you don't know about Bruce Willis?
Not too much. I try not to get too involved in these celebrities' personal
then I don't want to ruin it for you.
No, that's okay. I can hear it.
He is notoriously one of the most difficult actors to work with in cinema history.
What actor isn't difficult to work in cinema?
No, like on like a cataclysmic level.
Okay.
Like there are people who have like sworn off ever working with him again because he is such a jerk, I guess.
I heard Kevin Smith had some.
That's one of them. Like basically a lot of his stories have been backed up. A lot of similar stories prior to that. But Die Hard 4 was just one of those movies where just he decided he was it's a Bruce Willis movie and I'm gonna do what I want to do, like he always does. And you get to a point where you're an actor like that. I get it. You get an ego. You get, things the way you want to do them or you don't want to do them. But
he always said in interviews he didn't like the idea of John McClane being a superhero. And I do think you can still make him a paragon without turning him into a superhero. I believe there is a difference between superhero and action hero. Superman is a superhero. Batman is an action hero.
Dweez, to answer your question, not so much Marlon Brando, because Marlon Brando just liked to fuck with people. Probably more like Val Kilmer, but it's more so just like he's lazy, and he's
like a laid back actor.
Not in that sense so much as like he'll get out on the set finally like 3 or 4 hours after he's supposed to be out there, and then he'll decide he don't want to shoot something and he'll do it some other way, and then it'll make it a fucking pain in the ass for the director and the editor to try and put together later on. Like listen to Kevin Smith's stories about him between Die Hard 4 and Cop Out, and you'll get it. That's pretty much the way I guess he was to work with.
I saw I don't know if it was a live stream or I think it was a live stream where or something, or even behind the scenes, like a movie that was supposed to be filmed that involved Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think. This one director was like uncertain if he can direct this film, and then they had like the guy like take a knife to Arnold and see how he and try to intimidate him, and then he was like, I like him, or something like that. It was
I don't know if I've heard that story, but
I don't remember where. It was recent, it was quick. I vaguely remember, but I heard something about a director actually took a knife to the actor to scare him, to see if he has the cojones to get this actor to do as he directs. I think something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, you'd have to give me some more specifics on that one. I might, It almost sounds like something Milius would do, but
yeah, I definitely got to.
I think you already knew Milius when they did Conan, so.
Well, I do know I have a bunch of liked videos. Some of them are, of course, live streams, but I don't remember which one. I'm pretty sure it must have been like something recent in the last this past week. I just can't remember which.
Oh wow, who was in it originally?
I don't remember. I just remember hearing it was a story about
Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and
well, I don't know about Stallone, but definitely
Schwarzenegger and
some director. I don't know who the director was.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I hate when I can't remember stuff like that.
See, that's weird because that sounds like something Milius would do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember hearing like something about how the one director was like he wasn't sure of himself in his ability to direct this movie with, I think, Schwarzenegger or whoever, and someone had said, take a knife to him, try and scare this guy, and then he does it. And then Schwarzenegger or whoever the actor was said, I like him. I'll take him. So it's like, yeah, that's when it was like a test kind of thing. A test to see if he has the cojones.
Jesse says it had the annoying cab driver. Are you talking about Total Recall?
Oh.
Would it have been Verhoeven?
Maybe. I don't know.
Huh. I can't believe Verhoeven would say that, though. Verhoeven's one of those that would scare the fuck out of you before you'd have a chance to think twice.
Oh yeah, Verhoeven. He's that guy that he's the one who directed RoboCop and Starship Troopers.
Yep.
Yeah, he's the one that does those awesome parody commercials on TV.
Yeah, because see, I couldn't see. See, the thing is okay. So somebody else told him to do it. Okay, I got you now.
Okay.
I was thinking you said that the director had done that on his own. Like I misinterpreted the story originally.
Yeah, well, again, I couldn't remember the exact details myself.
Because Verhoeven or Milius wouldn't have to do that.
Okay.
He would know them already. Let's see. Maybe it was on. If you don't find the clip, but I'm wondering if it wasn't. Was it a recent interview or a recent movie?
I think it was like a watch party live stream or something like that. I don't remember exactly which. Because
I know they lost the original director on Running Man, and I know that he did not like the new director that came on, but they eventually got along, but I don't know what transpired. That could have been it. But if the movie's newer, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it was one of those older action films. It's just I don't remember exactly the full story.
I can't remember the name of the director, but if it was Running Man, that would make sense. Or I'm trying to think of another movie he worked on where it changed directors.
Yeah, I don't even remember whose live stream it was. I don't know if it was Comics Division or someone else. Darn, I hate when I get these. I remember little bits, but I can't remember the full details.
He was humble, I guess, at that time, KR, but he also got a big ass payday because he had a fucking agent with balls of steel. And they asked for $4 million and got it. Or I think it was 4.5. I can't remember which. But yeah, they couldn't believe that they got it. And then everybody was calling it like the dumbest move to give the comedy TV star a big fucking action movie for $4 or $5 million, whatever it was. Yeah, they thought they were crazy at the time. Because you got to think about that with inflation. That's like giving. That'd be almost like giving. Let's see here. Who's a big CW kind of star? What's like the equivalent right now?
Stephen Amell.
Like, yeah, that'd be like, well, no, he's too action oriented.
Yeah, but he's probably the biggest CW star at the moment.
Well, I'm trying to think of somebody who'd be like more in the comedy, but not quite sitcom. Let me think here. I don't know. But like, okay, somebody from like Big Bang Theory or something like that. That's a bad example, but like
Kelly Cuoco, maybe.
Okay, yeah, they give her some big action film right now. And they paid her like $5 million, actually more like $15 million or $20 million. That would be the same thing, basically. Because at that time, all Bruce Willis was known for was moonlighting.
Yeah, which was also referenced in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie.
Yeah, it's in Moonlighting. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No, but I have heard about it. How it was like about Bruce Willis's character and this woman. They obviously are hot for each other, but all they ever do is yell and snipe at each other. But then the show just people lost interest when they finally slept together.
Yeah, it's suffered from the same problem most shows do when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just basically a comedy or rom-com on TV, and he was just known as this comedic actor, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of what they didn't want to go for this typical actor at the point, you know. That was the whole thing once Sinatra turned it down.
Yeah, like Kristen Krug on Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li.
That's probably a good comparison, but even though Smallville's more of an action-oriented show than
Street
Moonlighting.
Fighter. Oh, Moonlighting, yeah.
Like I was trying to I don't even know if there's really even a show quite like Moonlighting on now. I'm trying to think. Like a light dramedy on TV or something. I'm trying to think, but yeah. Where like you would just like or what's that guy that was on Scrubs? Or
Scrubs.
What's his face?
I vaguely remember Scrubs.
Or one of those kind of shows, you know, like they gave like one of those guys like an action movie for some dumb reason, you know. KR's got an example coming for us. He's been pretty on point tonight, so let's see. Oh, it doesn't have to be a CG. I was just trying to think of a show like Moonlighting. There's not really much of an equivalent anymore. Bryan Cranston, Malcolm in the Middle. That's not a horrible example, but see, Bryan Cranston reinvented himself, though, too. And it is good. Yeah, that's kind of similar. But he kind of did it for himself, and it kind of took him, you know, like, you know, Breaking Bad and all that kind of stuff. But Breaking Bad was how many years after Malcolm? And he had done a lot of bit parts in between there.
You know, talk about reinventing themselves. Have you ever seen the show Under the Dome?
No, but I know what it is.
Yeah. Do you know about what's his name? No, not Stephen King. The guy that played the mayor, Big Jim. He was also in. I think he was in Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. I don't know. Darn it. Dean Harris. Yes, Dean. I think that's it. Dean Harris, or Dean Norris. Dean Norris. That's what it is. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But yeah, Dean Norris, believe it or not, he was in Lethal Weapon 2. He was one of the squad guys that was helping Riggs. And get this, he was also in Terminator 2.
Yeah, I see that
he was the SWAT team leader who shot Miles Dyson and ordered everyone to fall back.
He was in the Death Wish remake with, speaking of Bruce Willis. He's also in Starship Troopers.
So anyways, I have this idea for how I would do my own Terminator 3, one that really respects the first two films, but also kind of really puts an end to the franchise if you wanted to do another, you know, battle in the present today instead of in the future war. It opens up with Dean Norris as a aged detective, and he's being given a surveillance footage, and he sees it's the Terminator, and he's like going out to the bullpen to the young officers who are cocky, full of themselves, and reminds them of the phone book killer from 1984, as well as it being the same guy from 1995 who blew up Cyberdyne. He's been seen an hour ago, and we're only just now finding out about it. I want him found yesterday. And then as he sits down, he looks at the surveillance footage, and he has flashbacks to getting shot in the knee in 1995 at the Cyberdyne building. And he's like, what the fuck are you? Because he remembers seeing glints of metal under his flesh as he was getting shot in that corridor. That's what I would do for a Terminator 3.
Well, like KR Companion said, what? Terminator Woke Fate didn't do it for you?
Woke Fate? What the frick is Woke Fate? Never heard of any Woke Fate. There is no Woke Fate. So as far as I know, the last Terminator movie made was Genesis.
I wouldn't even go that far.
Well, that's the thing. I think Terminator Genesis had good potential, which is why it shit the money bed, my friend.
I was fine with Terminator 3 or even the one
Salvation.
Yeah, because at least either one of the two leave the films open for the first two. That's all that matters.
Well, on my TechCom channel, I'm definitely going to do a 2 videos. Well, actually, technically 3. A 2-part rewrite of Terminator Genesis that would have made it better, and a rewrite of Dark Fate that would have made that a damn good movie.
I know how to fix them. Don't make them.
obviously. But I mean, this is about good storytelling. If you're going to do a movie, make sure you have a damn good story to go with it and not a half-assed bad
like
story.
3, as bad as 3 gets shit upon, it wasn't that bad.
No. I mean, there were moments where it came off as a parody of itself, but it really did try to take itself seriously.
Yeah, I mean, and that ending subverted my expectations in a good way.
Of course.
I mean,
yeah, same here.
And again,
I was like
shocked.
shocked.
You can still have Salvation if you want it, and Salvation, as long as you leave the ending open for part 2. I mean, Salvation had the right idea. Get us the fuck out of the present. Get into the future. We already know you're way past your due date. You know, it's like either the just problem was, get off the pot at this point.
The problem was they were being so grounded and serious. They didn't have the laser guns, and they hardly referenced the time traveling. And I feel like they should have done more of that. I feel like, see, here's the thing. There is a fan theory in the Terminator community. Marcus Wright, you know, the human cyborg. There's the theory that he is the son of the desk sergeant from Terminator 1, the one that the Terminator ran through with the car when he drove into the police station after saying, "I'll be back."
Yeah.
So you could say that Marcus did not exist in the original timeline, but in this new timeline created because the Terminator affected 1984 and history thereafter, Marcus's life was changed. That's why he became a cyborg in the future war. That's why I feel like the CGI Arnold that we got in Salvation should have kept his skin when Marcus encountered him, because he would have seen the footage of his dad getting run over by this guy in 1984, and he would finally be seeing the person, the monster, the machine responsible for the death of his father and the altering of his life, and he's going to change it. That would have made the Salvation more interesting, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't mind that it finally went to the future, and we didn't have to worry about anything in the present anymore.
Yeah, it's too bad they made it too Mad Max and not enough Terminator, because they didn't have the laser guns.
To a point, yeah. I mean, in the end, though, my whole thing was 3 was enough. 3 was plenty. 3 didn't shit the bed yet. Salvation didn't even quite shit the bed. It was bad enough, but I mean, yeah, I mean, like Jesse's saying, you can't really prevent Judgment Day, because then you have a paradox, because Judgment Day, if you prevent it, then John Connor doesn't exist.
Unless you go into that multiverse of timelines theory.
It's all kind of, then that's where like bringing more time travel into Terminator really ruins it.
Well, see, here's the thing. The time travel was kind of simple in the first place.
That's the point is, it's just there as an element of the plot.
Yeah,
to get it going.
It's meant to further the plot. It's not meant to be talk to death.
And it was just, and the only reason it was there was for 2 reasons mainly, and mainly one, and that was to kind of give the Terminator a reason to go after said character.
And a reason to explain why the Terminator is so unstoppable, because it's not something made in this time period. It's something futuristic that's made from a metal that hasn't even been invented yet.
Or just basically because of at that time, especially, it wasn't something that could be seen as realistic at all.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and that's the thing. That's why I feel like you could do a lot with a post-Terminator 2 story. That's one of the reasons why my Resident Evil Terminator crossover fan series that I'm going to write and record is going to explore that possibility.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that at this point. Like you said, they're so out of fucking whack. You might as well.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're a fan of Resident Evil, the video games, you know that the video games originally start in 1998. And Judgment Day originally was supposed to be 1997. So basically, because John and Sarah prevent Judgment Day, it leads to the Resident Evil timeline. But at the same time, remnants of the Terminator timeline are coming back to haunt them.
Well, and here's the thing is, sadly, like Terminator Dark Fate could have been good had they only changed a couple things, really.
I can already tell you how I would, or give you a brief idea how Dark Fate could have been done well. Because Dark Fate technically, it opened with the death of John. We all know that. Spoiler alert. But I did a Terminator What If, my first What If. What if Reese failed to save Sarah in 1984. Basically, during the Tech Noir shootout, he was about to try and shoot the Terminator like we see in the film, but then this one guy saw him pulling out the gun, try and grip it, tried to be a hero, thinking he was being a hero, but all he was doing was ruining everything. And as a result of his supposed heroism, the Terminator shot Sarah dead. But then when Reese shoots the Terminator in rage, the Terminator gets back up, sees him, recognizes him from the future, realizes, if someone from the future has come back, that could still hinder Skynet's rise to power and the extermination of mankind. So basically, Sarah has been taken out of the picture, and it comes down to Reese versus the Terminator. And then when Reese finally deals with the Terminator, he basically has to hope that the future war comes about. He'll try to lead humanity as much as possible to push Skynet to create the time displacement equipment. But, he is only pushing it that far so that he can go back and undo his mistake of failing to save Sarah. So therefore, it keeps the original timeline of the Terminator movie intact. That's what you could have done with Dark Fate. You could have had it where, because John died, Sarah had to take the responsibility of leading the resistance. Didn't do a good job most of the time, but she still pushed Skynet to the point of making the time machine. And now she can go back and fix her mistake of failing to save John.
Well, I think they already said in the one movie she's already dead by the time that happens.
Well, that was Terminator 3, but Dark Fate was trying
even
to
in
ignore
Terminator
that.
2, I think they even say that because,
well, they didn't say it in the film, but they did imply it. They did say it that she did die in the future war in the novels, because it was shortly before the final battle.
Well, the whole
against
thing was
Skynet.
Reese never met her in the future. That's one thing.
Well, if he did meet her, he never really, he didn't know who didn't know her.
Well, he would have known who she was because he was told by John who she was in the picture, and that was the whole thing.
True.
That
Or
was
at
kind of
least-
implied that she was already dead by then. But here's the thing. You don't even have to do that. Here's all you got to do to fix that movie. And it ignores anything but the first two films, so you can get rid of them if you really wanted to. You bring back Edward Furlong for reals.
Yeah.
And you play into the fact that he's a bloated alcoholic. You play into the fact that Judgment Day didn't happen. His mother fucked his life up. And now he's living out in the woods with another Terminator that he reprogrammed.
How could he reprogram another Terminator?
We'll make it up that way. Just because just like he did with the little fucking shits that he uses, because he tore the one apart in part 2. So he kind of knows how they work.
Okay.
Whatever. You don't even have to have
maybe he used modern technology to try and create his own Terminator.
Well, regardless, if you really want to have an Arnold Schwarzenegger one there, doesn't matter. Point is basically you have John Connor in this place where his life's destroyed because his mother raised him to be the savior of the world of a war that never happened.
Yeah.
Or at least hasn't happened yet. And so he's can't keep a job, can't keep a relationship. He blames his mom for everything that happened to him, so they're estranged. And he also has a daughter.
Yeah.
Okay? And now the daughter can be that girl that's in the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now what you have happen, though, is this other Terminator shows up from the future now to kill his daughter because she's actually the next bloodline. Now that he's had her in the future, it would have been, if the war was going on, he would have been gone and his daughter would be the leader of the resistance, right?
Yeah.
So you have John Connor redeem himself by saving his daughter from being killed and dying in the process. And then at which point, the only person left who can teach her how to deal with what she's got to deal with is her grandmother.
Well, I can take that idea of yours, and I kind of already made my idea, as Jesse knows. I did.
Well, I mean, that's the basic premise of how. Just kind of, that way you don't make John a failure. That way you don't make Sarah a failure. That way you keep it in the family bloodline.
Yeah,
you can still have a new female, because even if you kind of go off of the shit before. I mean, they keep Kate Brewster in Salvation.
Yeah, even if they do change the actress. Yeah,
right. But I mean, even if you don't want to go down that storyline, I mean, he eventually was supposed to have a daughter or kid or whatever. You can have him have a daughter.
Many
or whatever.
children, several children at least. But yeah, as Jesse would attest to, my second Terminator what if was the alternate ending of Terminator 2. Basically, my idea was, if Judgment Day didn't happen in 1997, but it could still happen. John does, get married, but he doesn't like my version is he's not Edward Furlong, and he's not, like a drunk or whatnot. He's like it's the Michael Edwards John Connor, the one who played him in the future war scenes. And he basically he managed to get back in the middle of society. He was just careful about it. And that's why, and he went to military school. And so, he was able to make something of himself. He gets married, has a daughter, and that daughter's named after Sarah's late roommate and best friend, Ginger. You have Ginger Connor. And then that way, if a Terminator does show up, it's trying to kill Ginger Connor, and John has to protect her.
Yeah, part of that, but that would, at least with My Way, you can bring in, and I mean, they were already alluding to him being an alcoholic and shit in part 3 anyway.
Well, yeah, they alluded
because
to
that's
that.
the thing, you got to remember how he was fucked up in part 2.
Yeah,
I mean,
and not to mention, there's the twisted thought process of John. It's that he was borderline going toward being a drunk because, on one hand, he feels he's wasted his life by stopping the war. He kind of wants Judgment Day, and yet at the same time, he doesn't want it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you have this damaged, like, John in the new one, to where it's like, I didn't get to have my moment in the sun. Yeah, like, my life has been wasted. Instead of training for a job as a teacher or a cop, instead I trained to save the world, and I did that. So now what? Like, yeah, like, you're getting where I'm coming from. Like, there was a way to even have Edward Furlong back and do it and not kill him as a kid. It was just ridiculous. I mean, it was just a punch in the gut because he was a white kid. That's why. That was all of what it was about. They got to tear the white man down. Same thing. Look at what they did to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, they made it.
Me?
Yeah, they made him like a secondary character in his own movie.
Well, worse than that, they literally cut his what's off, and
but here's the thing:
made him an interior decorator.
Yeah, I mean that's stupid. And how do we know that Terminators can't reproduce? I mean, they have flesh. They have at least the organs between their legs. How do we know they can't reproduce with humans?
It's not so much that I have a problem believing that he couldn't necessarily do anything, because why would you program a Terminator to do that? Like, it's the last thing they would have to worry about. But I have a hard time believing any woman living with Arnold Schwarzenegger not wanting to get it on. That's the problem where I have with that. Like, that's just unbelievable. There's just no fucking way. I'm sorry, excuse my language, but no.
Hey, don't worry. We've already been dropping F-bombs. This stream is not made for
when I'm on other people's channels, I try to watch my.
Don't worry. This is totally adult, and not to mention your channel name is After Dark.
Well, that's true, but no, like I that's the thing I have a harder time believing in than Terminator's not being able to in any way pretend to have sex, even because. I don't know. I don't know if you've seen Terminator's The Sarah Connor Chronicles or not. Oh yeah. I was pissed when that show ended. That was infinitely better than anything we got after Terminator 2. I
will admit the show was great. It just, I wouldn't say great. It was very good, but it could have been better. Because I feel like there were still a few elements missing, in my personal opinion. Well, and it also suffers from what I was brought up earlier, is when you start bringing in too much time travel into this. Yeah, that too. Because, I mean, I feel like that's one of the problems Genesis had, was the whole jumping forward in time, when you should just keep it in the time period you're traveling back to. Well, and if that's what they're going to do, at that point, when I was watching Genesis, my problem with it is if you're going to remake Terminator, just remake Terminator at this point. Yeah, I already have my own idea of how to remake Terminator, yet still have it be a continuation. Honestly, here's my thing. I'm in the camp of Terminator really isn't a franchise. It's 2 movies. It could be a franchise. That's the thing. And even if you say it's a trilogy, like the trilogy we got with the first 3 is enough. It would have been a trilogy because here's the thing. It would have been a James Cameron trilogy if the darn because I don't know if you heard about it or not, but the T2 3D Battle Across Time I know about that. Yeah, that was supposed to be that was supposed to open a door to a Terminator 3, but the studios wouldn't take it. If they had taken it then, Cameron could have given us that final Terminator 3 to make a full. Oh, I'm sure there was more to it than that. Or James just couldn't deliver it when they wanted that. And I also know that the studio that
originally released
Yeah,
Terminator went
Carol Co.
belly up, yeah. But
Yeah.
no, like here's the thing. It's just you have a simplified story, and once you get to part 2, you either have the story ended to where they've succeeded and they stop Judgment Day from happening, which creates a paradox. I get that, but regardless, for movie magic, it works.
Yeah.
Or you can just accept that part 3 ends. Like, have you ever seen the original Planet of the Apes films?
Never seen them. I've seen the remake.
Okay,
and
without giving too much away, like basically
I got the
way,
general idea. I saw
like,
the Tim Burton one, and I saw the whatchamacallit, the one with James Franco.
okay, well, basically, that's not a good example because those are, yeah. But the way the original series works is it wraps around on itself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I like how part 3 is. Like, it kind of wraps around with the series. Like, oh, you can't stop Judgment Day. Well, if you do, then none of this happens. You know, that's what I loved about that ending. Walking out of it, it's like at first you're just like, oh, whoa, what just happened? Like, and then you're like, oh yeah, of course it has to.
Well, the
You know,
way
like,
I see it, Judgment Day keeps happening because somewhere in the timeline, the humans are doing something wrong. All the time travel, altering time, it's building up to that final timeline where they can finally prevent Judgment Day. Because that, to me, is what Terminator 1 and 2 symbolize. Terminator 1 symbolized, yes, there is a chance this war has happened many times before. And this whole event of Reese and Sarah getting together, only for Reese to die and Sarah to give birth to John, could have happened several times before already. Terminator 2 was like showing that that revolving circle through time, that closed loop, is about to get broken. That's because that was the thing. The moment she got shot and arrested and the T-1000 was sent back, that was the moment the loop started to break.
Right. And you always have this problem of, like you said, you know, the whole paradox issue. But, you know, you can always look at it as certain things were meant to happen certain ways just because, you know, the Terminator was sent back and so was Kyle Reese. And if Kyle Reese wasn't sent back, then John Connor doesn't exist. It's a whole paradox in and of itself. And that's kind of the reason why I think Cameron wrote it that way.
Yeah.
To where it's like, because, you know, once you start breaking down time travel and all the, you know, possibilities of it and how it works, it's,
yeah,
you know, that's where when I say people give Endgame a real hard time, when actually it's probably one of the few movies that does get most of time travel right, really, if you break it down, because Hulk is kind of right in that scene and everything, the way he explains it. Now, the movie itself is questionable in how it plays it out. Mm-hmm. But what everything Hulk is saying is technically kind of true. You can't change something and then go back to the place where you came from because you already changed. Like, you know, all those little things that he points out that create paradoxes. Like, you can go to the future, but you can't go to the past technically. Like, it doesn't really matter because you're never going to be able to go. Once you change something, it's never the same past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think even Einstein kind of had a theory about this too, to where, like, you know, he already said, like, you know, obviously time travel to the future's possible. I think it was Einstein. It's possible, but traveling to the past is a whole nother, like,
a whole nother ball game, basically.
But, you know, in you traveling into the future, then you start asking yourself questions, you know, in opening doors to where, like, okay, well, now have you created another alternate timeline? Because now you technically have created a timeline where, let's say you went 30 years into the future, you didn't exist for 30 years. But now if you did, then that means you went back in time, but how could that still be the same time? Like, yeah, you have this major paradoxical issue that always overlaps on itself.
Yeah,
it's like taffy. Like,
well, here's the thing. I think to simplify time travel, you got to simplify it in terms of a story, how you tell a story.
Back to the Future works the best in that respect.
Well, because here's how I see it. The point is, like you said, certain things are supposed to happen. John's supposed to be born. Skynet's supposed to be created. Judgment Day is supposed to occur. John is supposed to rise up and lead humanity to survival against Skynet, and Skynet is defeated, right? Basically, some argue Judgment Day is supposed to happen to show humanity the error of its hubris. And when you go back to try and change the past to prevent Judgment Day, you're in essence taking away the very thing that teaches us the lesson about our hubris. But then John Connor is still technically leader of humanity because he's leading people to survival in the past, trying to destroy Skynet to prevent Judgment Day. So he's still fulfilling his own prophecy in the past that he's supposed to in the future. So
right.
So yeah, it's like that's what why I can believe Judgment Day can be prevented, because the actions of the past are now also becoming, the future past. Days of future past kind of thing.
Kind
of,
I mean? But you almost have to have what they're missing in that third movie, even though they couldn't have, Linda Hamilton didn't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Was they're kind of missing that point where she should have either faked her death, or the reason that she's gone is she did whatever, but then she comes back to tell them you can't stop Judgment Day. Judgment Day has to happen for these various reasons. Regardless, because they're successful. They know that no matter what happens, that's the whole reason why the machines are sending back machines, is because they're failing. They fail.
Yeah, because they're trying to change their fate.
Exactly. So you almost have to have a point where it would almost been in part 2 where Sarah was trying to destroy Skynet, where another Sarah showed up and told her no matter what you do, this is inevitable, and if you do succeed, then John will not be. There's this whole paradoxical thing where she has to kind of understand.
But technically, John does exist, because the future she's creating is not the one Reese came from. And so therefore she's not.
And that goes with the plot of the movie, yeah, to where it's there's no fate but the fate you make, and blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
Exactly.
But there's nothing in the story in those films that really gives us a reason why that should be, because again, by all paradoxal, no matter how you break it down, if the war doesn't happen and they don't send Kyle Reese back in time and he doesn't exist in the first place, then there's this whole problem with that.
Well, in the T2 novel, they're actually the end that ending, that deleted ending where old Sarah is at the playground watching John play on the jungle gym with his daughter in the middle of Washington, D.C. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. I've seen the alternate ending.
Well, that ending is in the novel. And in the novel, it states that Sarah did hire private investigators to try and find Kyle Reese. But they couldn't find him because Kyle Reese in this reality is not the same Reese from that she knows. So he could be
that really makes sense.
So he's either he wasn't born at all, or he was born but under a different name or different personality, or even a different appearance.
Yeah, it just sounds like they're trying to write themselves out of a corner.
Well, no, that was the novel based on Terminator.
No, I know, but that's probably half the reason why Cameron changed it, because you're kind of writing yourself in a corner there.
Well, that's why it wasn't even in the scene when they filmed it. It was in the it was more of a what is the word exposition text in the novel.
Because the problem you have is because that they present in whatever one it was, where Kyle's just a young kid or whatever in the future or wherever,
Mm-hmm. And by the way, Anton Yelchin did a good job as young Kyle Reese.
Yeah, he wasn't too bad, but what's his face in the Genesis one was
Jai Courtney. He was definitely miscast.
That was complete miscast.
Yeah, definitely, and not just because he didn't have the look of. He didn't even look
Jai
like Michael
Courtney should have been playing a Terminator. If anything.
Exactly. My thoughts exactly. He had the bulk of a Terminator.
He actually looks more like Arnold Schwarzenegger than he does Kyle Reese.
Exactly, because whatchamacallit? You probably never heard of General Hospital, have you?
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was this actor on the show recently, Drew Kane. He was, let's see. Let me type it in here. Billy Miller. Basically, he was, someone actually found an image of him and compared him to Michael Biehn. he would have been a good recast of Michael Bihn's Kyle Reese.
Mm.
He would have been just a tad bit bulkier, but he had the facial look and the hair. So that's a point in his favor there.
Well,
one could argue that maybe because of the changing of the timeline, maybe there was a little more food and Reese bulked up a little.
Well, and see, Cameron he retconned some of his own stuff between the first and second film too.
But still, you get the gist of the story.
Right. And I mean, like one of the things that is all the Terminators look like Arnold kind of thing.
Well, not all of them, because if you remember the first one,
that model, I know, because the way they set it up in the first movie is it's just they all look different. They just this one just happened to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever. It's when they get to that second film that they changed that.
Well, actually, technically, they weren't changing that. You see, in the second film, there actually is a deleted scene in the future war sequence that shows Frank Columbu's Terminator reprise himself. He's like in the middle, wandering through the landscape, shooting at soldiers, but then he gets blown up. So it's like it's basically showing there are still different model Terminators, but Arnold is the one that is, that keeps getting sent back for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know about that part, but I mean, at the same time, though, I mean, that's the other problem you have with the Terminator. Speaking of Arnold, is he is the franchise. You have that main issue.
Yeah.
And not so much like Rambo, but because but he is still the namesake in a sense that he is the face of the franchise. And
but we do.
Him, it's just
the way I see it, T-800s, their body, the flesh tone, it needs to always be a bulky bodybuilder type, because that's a whole chunk of big, heavy, bulky machine there, and they need a bulky skin to cover that. And so the body of a bulky bodybuilder just makes sense. So since you had Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Columbu, someone like Jai Courtney would be an ideal Terminator.
Oh, I should have just said it out loud since I just wasted dead space to say it. KR Companion was talking about the deleted scene from part 3 that had I think it was General Candy or Tandy or something like that.
Sergeant Candy. But and that's one version. I actually there's also another version in a novel, T2 Infiltrator, where there was this this Austrian secret agent, and he was seen as the Terminator as well. I actually made a video on this. I'll let me put it in the
well, here's the thing you have, and this is why I keep standing with Terminator's not really a franchise, is I have dreaded every movie since part 3. That's the big problem is, and they've lived up or been worse than my expectations could have even, thought they could be. It's and then that goes back to the whole thing with it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's James Cameron, it's Linda Hamilton. It's these three things, kind of like Kirk, Spock, and Bones. They're the franchise. If there's any kind of franchise to it, it's them. And without them three, you just don't have it. And then of course you added Edward Furlong to that mix in part 2, and without him, it makes it a quadrant kind of thing then, and you just can't. It doesn't work without it. No matter who plays who, it's just not the same.
Well, I still feel like people keep putting so much on Edward Furlong, yet they're overlooking the original future John Connor, and that's Michael Edwards.
Well, yeah, that's because we only saw him for 2 seconds.
Yeah, but he pretty much is. But he didn't have to say anything. He just showed up, looked good, and that's all.
Well, so because to us, Edward Furlong is John Connor. Like, we spent the most time with him.
He was young John Connor.
Yeah,
but if we're going to see a future war, we're going to need the future John, and that is.
But the thing is we've gotten to that point where he's aged into the role. He may not look like it now, but that's where you play off that. And I mean, and again, it's like you don't necessarily have to go there. That's the whole point. Is just get rid of it, end it. We don't need it. It can live on in novels, comic books, video games, but it's proven that it's not going to work in movies, and it's too expensive for TV. It doesn't get enough.
Yeah,
audience.
I mean, I do agree somewhat that it doesn't need to continue in movies. But like I said, I do have a few story ideas that would make good Terminator films.
Oh, well, put them down. I mean, like the worst that could happen is somebody could tell you no.
Yeah, the best I could get hope for is that a lot of people support it. It's just Hollywood won't go for it because they're a bunch of idiots with their heads up their ass.
Well, you have a problem right now is that the Terminator franchise
I know it's
pretty much committed suicide.
Well, yeah, but that's because freaking Hollywood's too stupid to hire good writers. I mean, if I can show the community that my ideas for a Terminator movie are great, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to want to demand them to want to be made into a movie. It's just Hollywood won't do it because they're too stubborn. Your thoughts?
Pretty much. I mean, that's part of it. But you also have a problem with it doesn't matter how great a sequel can be after you have too many stinkers, you lose the audience.
True.
Like, part 8 can be great, but if 6 and 7 were shit, it ain't gonna matter at that point. I mean, and I used to think almost any certain franchises were above, certain things, but look at what happened to Star Wars. It only took one movie to kill that franchise, so
yeah, sadly. But some can argue it took 2 because some people didn't believe didn't believe that Last Jedi was really the real end.
Right. And I don't know about it being such a debate for Terminator. We're in pretty much agreement on most of Terminator.
It was a subtle debate.
I don't even know if there really was much debate there. For the most part, we've pretty much been in agreement.
well, yeah, but I mean, it's like you said that it's not a franchise. I did politely argue that it could be a franchise.
Point, but then you kind of at the end you're like, yeah. At this point, it doesn't need any more movies. So.
Everyone, please hit the refresh button on this tab. And you'll find that I have officially changed the title.
But I should probably go here sooner than later, although...
but we are enjoying this, aren't we?
Oh, yeah, I love to talk movies.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to talk with you for a while, and it was like yesterday I thought to myself, you know what, I got nothing planned, might as well make the scheduling now. I just didn't expect it would actually go tonight.
Sometimes that's the best way to get me on... a program, especially now my schedule's really booked. So
yeah. I mean, I've never been real good with scheduling. I'm just always usually an improv guy. That's why sometimes I go like almost a whole week without doing game streams, and then I'll do like a few streams like a day or a week, or
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to be, just like every YouTuber who does like same stuff, different day. I want each video, each content to be new, refreshing, not feel dated, kind of like, my Terminator channel with the different topics I bring up on that channel.
Right. And I mean, I love the first 2 films, and I do like the third film. But
I even like Salvation to an extent.
Yeah, I as hard as I am on it, I like the idea of it more than I actually like the film, though.
To me, I will say this. To me, the first 30 minutes of Genesis is the best part of that film. And I will get into, when I do get around to making that, telling my 2-part rewrite of Genesis, I will make it abundantly clear what worked, what didn't work, and what would make the movie better.
As far as Genesis goes, I have just issues with it all around.
Well, like I said, I got 2 versions of it. There's the version where it stays in 1984, and then there's the version where, yeah, they do jump forward in time to 2017, but I tell the ending differently in a better way.
Yeah, it's.
But I definitely think the first part of that idea where they stay in 1984 will definitely work a lot better.
Well, there you go. Good luck with that, because I don't know. Like I said,
well, I'll let you know when I make those videos, and then I'll DM them right to you.
All right, sounds good.
So, yeah, this has been a great 2 hours talking with you, Tom.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of remember Genesis starting out okay, and then I think when it went downhill between the time they went to the future and the whole John Connor thing and all that crap. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, the moment they went into they showed they have a time machine in the in 1984. That's when it really started to lose me.
Yeah.
Just the way I will admit, they went through hell recreating the future war and recreating the 1984 scenes, just doing them somewhat differently. That I give them props for that.
Yeah, I mean the production design and certain elements of it were spot on, but
yeah,
it's like, why would you try so hard and then get Jai Courtney to play what's his face,
Kyle Reese? Yeah,
me. So
yeah, and
sorry,
that's
yeah, I'm getting sugar low. That's why I can't remember shit right now.
Oh no, that's okay. You get some sugar in me because I also plan on. I already had dinner. I'm about to have dessert myself, and but yeah, this is Tom from Midnight's Edge. I'm Jeffrey Turner from well, I went by Mega Jetty 1, but I changed the name of the channel because I wanted to shorten it, and unfortunately I couldn't shorten it to have Mega Jetty involved. So unfortunately it's just Jeffrey Turner now. You can only see Mega Jetty 1 on my channel banner. It's the Blockbuster ticket logo, but with Mega Jetty 1 on it instead of Blockbuster. And thank you all for joining us. Care to plug yourself, Tom?
That sounds rude. No. Oh, you can find me on Midnight's Edge and After Dark and in all those kind of fun places. And Jesse's another good one if you like to talk movies. If you haven't yet, he's.
Oh yeah,
I know you know Jesse.
Oh yeah, we talk a lot every time we stream Friday the 13th.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I just got that box set in the mail.
What box set?
Friday the 13th one.
Oh, what Friday the 13th box set? What's in it?
It's the Shout Factory did a box set of all 12 movies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
12. Well, I thought there were. Oh, okay. There's Friday the 13th.
Counting the remake and Freddy
okay.
versus Jason, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense now. Yeah, and it sucks they still haven't put Jason X in the official game of the Friday the 13th. And I
I don't think it's going to happen.
I know. I've actually been saying this to Jesse and whoever I stream Friday the 13th with. I do personally like, even though it's not Jason, I like Pitt playing as Part 5 Jason because of the blue streaks on the mask as opposed to the usual red streaks. And I feel like, considering how parts 6 through 9 really showed that mask with the red streaks really get old, rotted, and cracked a lot, I feel like if they do another Friday the 13th, it should open where Jason's chasing some people out of Crystal Lake. One of them has a sledgehammer, smashes them in the face, destroying the red streak mask, and he's without a mask as he pursues them into Crystal Lake town, and then he chases them into the Crystal Lake PD. He wanders through the evidence lockup. He sees the old Part 5 mask with the blue streaks and decides to replace his destroyed mask with that one.
And you just pissed off 90% of the Friday the 13th fan base.
Why?
Just trust me on that one.
Oh, come on. It would be a good...
That mask is iconic for a reason, and Part 5 pissed off so many people when that came out.
Yeah, but at least with this, you finally get Jason wearing the Part 5 mask.
Most fans don't like that mask, even without it being Jason, but... No, I get where you're coming from for like a fan like thing. Yeah. That was...
Well, I mostly like it... I mostly like it because blue's my favorite color.
And I was going to say, like, and I know that fans get pissed when you mess with the mask because, like, Jesse brought up what they did to him in Jason Goes to Hell.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, that did not set well with fans.
Yeah, that didn't even look like a mask. It looked more like
it
something
was still
stuck
at least
to his
the original.
face.
That was the whole point. It was the original mask. Like, that was one of the things Adam got right. Was the idea of that he's been wearing this mask so long that it's basically embedded itself into his face.
The only error they made with that movie was where they put the crack in the mask as well as the old scar from
I think they fucked up one thing or one or two things. Yeah,
but the video game when they were designing the video game and they made the Part 9 skin, they put the crack in the mask and the scar from the axe in the head in the right spot.
I think KR's right. Like, the fans would probably be more jazzed if they saw him put on the metal mask than if they saw him put on what's his face's mask from Part 5.
Yeah, but I just, like I said, even though I know part 5, a lot of people did not like it, I still like the mask because of the blue streaks, because, you know, blue's my favorite color. That's why my character that
And Jesse's right. He technically had a new mask in part 8, even though it had the same mark in it.
I know, it had the same exact look to it. That's a little bit of a questionable lore knowledge there.
Yeah, it's been destroyed a couple times.
Yeah.
Jason X is your favorite Jason. See, my only problem with Jason X is they didn't go all the way with Uber Jason. They should have just let him completely go. I would have loved to have. I don't like the half and half thing. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. If they'd just had all the way, because that would have been cool to me. But Jason X I like for its hamminess, but it's what
I'd really like to see is in Friday the 13th, the video game, they give us the remake skin where he's like wearing a jacket, a green jacket over a black shirt.
I'm not
with
a fan
gloves
of that
whatnot.
Version.
Well, even so, but it's the look I'm talking about.
But for those who are,
yeah, because that's the look that was in the Mortal Kombat X video game.
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know why they didn't decide to finish any of the stuff for Friday the 13th, because as far as I know, they could have. It's just they decided to move on to that other game.
Yeah, and I do want to bring up one more thing. KR Companion was talking a lot about how Die Hard and Commando were like connected because they shared the same fictional country, Valverde. Predator also technically had that, but of course in Predators they retconned it saying it was Guatemala. The thing is, it's always been up for debate as to where Valverde is on the map. I always saw it along the Guatemala border. And maybe over time, maybe the country of Valverde lost its independence, and then it got absorbed back into Guatemala. But it still is essentially Valverde.
It's easy, just don't count Predators.
Yeah, well, I still enjoy Predators.
It's the best of the sequels, probably besides 2. But
2 is honestly a better sequel, I'll admit.
But yeah, I mean, if I had to ignore it, I could.
Yeah. But I will say this, The Predator could have been good, but they really, really, really screwed up.
What movie? I don't know what you're talking about. That thing don't exist.
Yeah, same thing with Woke Fate.
And Requiem, and yeah.
Well, actually, Requiem had its problems, but it had a thing or two it could have gone for. But it really did screw up because...
I think Requiem is probably the worst of both franchises, to be honest.
Really?
With you. Yeah.
Wow. I had an issue with Alien 3 because of the whole...
but the new Predator one probably gives it a run for its money. Oh, yeah, I'll give you that. Alien 3's beginning totally trashes Aliens. But what it has going for it is the rest of the movie's good. That's the problem. You could have found a way to get those two characters out of the way and not killed them, it would have been better.
But yeah, I actually do have my idea for an Alien 3 as well. It's basically Ripley, Hicks, repaired Bishop, and grown-up Newt. They're now older, part of the Colonial Marines. Uh-oh, I think we lost Tom. Lou? Oh, disconnected.
Evidently,
okay?
Hitting the enter button makes it refresh.
Oh, wow. Okay. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just did.
Okay.
Enter button and it refreshed the whole thing.
Oh, okay. But yeah, my Alien 3 is essentially Ripley, Hicks, repaired Bishop, and grown-up Newt are part of the Colonial Marines. They've been at war with Weyland-Yutani, and now Wei Yu has discovered the location of the Xenomorph homeworld, courtesy of the AVP video game from 2009. And so them and a large squad of Colonial Marines are going to race Weyland-Yutani to the Xenomorph homeworld to try and stop them. And you could even include the Predators if you want, or even if you but if you don't want to and you want to leave the Predators out of it, that's fine. Just keep it between the Colonial Marines and Wei Yu and the Xenomorphs. But basically, my theory as to why the whole Xenomorphs are the way they are, Xenomorphs are essentially personified as the dark version of its host. Because, you know, when the face hugger latches onto a host, implants an embryo, and then the embryo breaks out of the chest and then grows into its own thing. Basically, that's what happens to Ripley. She gets face hugged. She gets killed because of the chest burster. But the chest burster, when it's about to attack Newt, it hesitates. Because that harkens to what Hudson said in Aliens. How can they cut the power? They're animals. Basically, the xenomorphs were able to cut the power because those xenomorphs have the genetic knowledge from the hosts they came from. So this xenomorph hesitates in killing Newt because it has the connection from Ripley. Oh, you do got to run. Okay.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to. You know,
that's okay.
Stop everything.
That's okay. Yeah. I think we did take this a little too far. It was supposed to be a diehard debate, and we got carried away.
That's all right. I think we've gotten 2 hours out of it, but yeah, I got stuff I got to get to here.
Yeah, 2 damn good hours.
So, but no, it's been fun, and maybe we'll do this again sometime. And
I look forward to it.
Maybe we'll find something else we don't necessarily see eye to eye on, and
never
know.
We have our differences, but we can also find a way to talk about them. And who knows, we might have a change of opinion.
Yeah. No, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said tonight, I realized, there's certain things in part 2 that support things in part 3. So there you go. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think hopefully you kind of saw from a certain point of view where some of that could be more realistic in a sense.
Yeah. Well, true. Well, look, we said I've never been in a relationship before. I'm still got my fingers crossed, but.
Well, I hope for you it's one that lasts forever because.
Well, thank you. Then
you're the romantic and you can have something to say that, hey, at least I'm with somebody that lasted forever. So
yes, thank you. That really does help. But oh wow, that's quite the movie.
It's not, but I don't want to fight you about it.
What's not to like about it?
I don't hate it. I don't hate it enough to fight about it, but I don't like it enough to fight about it. So
yeah, I mean that is a hot film.
It's something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Boy, you're something, as Indy would say.
Pretty much. It's something.
But yeah, you're Tom from Midnight's Edge.
Yes, so I am.
Tell them what you do, man.
I do the Midnight's Edge thing. We have a morning show now over on the main channel. Otherwise, we do our videos, our podcasts, all that good stuff. You find me here, there, and everywhere hanging out. Never know where I'll pop up.
And I'm Jeffrey Turner, aka Mega Jetty 1. I do a bunch of things. Right now, I'm mostly focusing on my secondary channels, focusing on the lore of franchises. I have TechCom, focusing on Terminator lore. I have Home 1, dedicated to Star Wars lore. And then I have Crane Kick, dedicated to the Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. And I do have plans for more lore channels, but for right now, I'm just going to maintain 3. And then there's my main channel, Jeffrey Turner, also known as Mega Jetty 1. And I do a variety of things, at least until I can get other channels dedicated to the franchise off the ground. So, for example, you may see a Resident Evil or an Inuyasha thing here. But, I'm still trying to push for that 1K for my main channel. Still currently trapped in limbo around 470 and hoping to get 500 and then eventually 1K. So this way I can get monetized and use that monetization to hopefully push my the publishing of my book, The Blue Shogun. But yeah, that's just it. So
well, at least you got goals. That's what matters.
Yeah. Hey, we all got to have goals, and unfortunately, this goal has taken me almost 17 years now.
Well, you're consistent.
Yes. And while I've gone through a bunch of damn rewrites, I am closer now than I was a year ago, and it's just making me crazy. Yeah. I mean, can you smell it? Because I smell it.
Well, I smell is your bullshit. Damn story.
That's a Beverly Hills Cop 2 reference.
Buy me a
Yeah.
mansion in Malibu.
You've stolen this house.
How can you steal a house? This is my
Monster's
uncle's house. Yeah, I really wish I was part of that Beverly Hills Cop live stream with you and World Class.
That was fun.
But that's
I
okay.
missed a lot of it, unfortunately. But
Yeah, but that's okay. I think he's going to have me on for the Karate Kid.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I wonder if I'll be on for that one. I got to ask him again when he's planning on doing Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I'll if I can't be part of the actual panel, I'll definitely be part of the chat.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening. Jeffrey Turner from Mega Jetty 1, Tom from Midnight's Edge After Dark, and you can bet on that.